All right, it's 7 o'clock. Calling the meeting to order. Tonight we have annual. Why am I hearing the echo? No. All right. Call the meeting to order. Tonight we have our budget presentations from library, facilities, technology, finance, shared costs, and then a budget summary. So I don't know I see Amy here, so Amy will kick it off.
Albert's on.
Yes, Albert online.
Okay. Kate, who's online, Kate? There we go.
Jackie's running.
Jackie, of course.
Jackie tonight.
Fabulous. Great. So thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Amy. I'm the director of the Reading Public Library. Online is Albert Pless, who's our director of equity. And I think Michelle Filial is on her way. With any luck, I'll be done with the presentation by the time the assistant director shows up. So, next slide, please. Thank you. Just a really quick overview. Every time someone comes to the library, they're stepping into sort of what I like to call a mission in action. And our mission is very simple, and I think it's very important. We connect people with each other, and we give them the opportunity to learn and grow in a welcoming space, a welcoming community space. And what does that look like? I mean, there's all these words up here. What does that really look like? And, it's somebody finding a quiet place to study. It's someone using our computers to find a job. It's a parent sharing a picture book with a child. It's an older adult visiting with neighbors and old friends. So those everyday moments are really what make up the essence of what the library does and our core values. Next slide. Just a little refresher on what we do. I'm sure most of you know. Libraries always bring to mind books, which are very important, but we do offer so much more. Last year, in fiscal year 24, we had 173,266 visitors come through the door. Why do they come through the door? To use one of the 22 computers or hop on the free wireless. We average about 4,000 to 5,000 wireless sessions per month. They came to attend some of the 728 programs that we have, including most of those are in person, although we have a few online and virtual. They come to get help from our expert, knowledgeable staff for research services. They had almost 20,000 reference interactions in fiscal year 24. And they come to print, scan, and fax important documents. And I always think this is interesting. I won't make you guess, but I always think it's interesting. It seems like a very little thing, printing, scanning, and faxing. In FY24, there were 15,000 documents scanned or faxed. There were 37,000 pieces of paper printed. So while I know that you can do that, a lot of people can afford to do this at home, or they have it, or that printer does actually work when they need the report. Sometimes it doesn't. So it is a service that we provide, and we're very glad to be able to do that. We're also generally open when you need us. In FY24, we were open 52 weeks, 3,602 hours, and that includes Saturdays, some Sundays from October to May, and then evenings. And if we're not open when you need us, you can't make it there, it's not a problem because we have a lot of services online. 24/7, you can access 84,000 ebooks, almost 40,000 audiobooks, 40 plus research databases. Our users have access to online tutoring, to test prep for everything from college testing to graduate school to civil service skills, things like that. And there's also over 200 digital magazines you can access. Next slide, please. all that is to say that the library remains a really great investment. Most of you have seen some version of this slide. In FY24, the community had over 500,000 physical and virtual interactions with the library. And while we can't measure some of the sort of social and emotional impacts that we have, we can tell you that for the parts we can measure, it translates to a pretty cool 365% return on investment. And it's basically residents receive about a $10 million value on a $2 million budget. So the library is more than a building with books, and it's really just at the heart of a connected and informed community. Next slide. Okay, so that was the sales pitch, right? That's the car that we want you to buy. But now comes the money part. At their November meeting, the trustees approved a 3.6% increase for FY26 in the coming year. That translates to a $78,900 increase. So it's $78,000, almost $79,000. And I'll just say, you're going to hear it from folks tonight, and you heard it last week. We are struggling to keep pace with the rising costs, as well as maintain the service, as well as respond to new and evolving needs of the community. Of the $79,000 increase, 3.6, $55,800 goes to wages. So the fair wages to our staff, who I argue turn every single budget dollar into some form of community service. Salaries make up 80% of our budget. It's a standard number. And that comes from the FY26 step plus COLA request for non-union staff. Overall, that $55,800 is a 3.2% increase over FY25 salaries. So that leaves the remaining $23,100 that will go towards an increase, a 5.4% increase in our operational expenses. The operational expenses that we need money for will help maintain our certification, which affects our municipal appropriations requirement, affects our materials, and then it also helps us to continue supporting the existing services, as well as support townwide diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Next slide, please. So just to talk about the existing expenses, just a quick dip into that. It's very little detail. We don't have a lot of expenses. It kind of gets all bundled up into things like technology, supplies, professional development, and of course our materials, which is lockstep with our normal budget increase. The biggest change that I'm just going to note here is that it's kind of squished in there, our program budget is down by 62%. It's been reduced from $10,500 to $4,000. That reduction of $6,500 is moved or transferred to a new budget line for the Office of Equity. And I'm actually going to turn the mic over to Albert Pless, our Director of Equity, who's with us online. He's going to give you some context and background for this next part of the expense budget. So it's a new budget line that we're implementing. We've talked about it for a couple of years. I think we talked about it last year, or just wasn't ready to put any numbers to it. And so Albert's going to talk about the overall request. Next slide, and Albert.
Great, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. And sorry I couldn't be there with you in person. Just some recent developments have forced me to be online with you, but I wouldn't miss this call for the world. So again, Albert Pless, Director of Diversity and Inclusion in the Office of Equity and Social Justice, when I'm tucked away in the beautiful library that Amy just referenced. And so, there's kind of these two buckets that really, I think a lot of the work that I've been doing fits in, and the future work to come. And, one of those buckets, again, I'd love to give a little more context to this, is staff training and development. That's what we're calling it here. And then, overall professional services. But again, just take a step back to go forward. Again, I want to thank, our town leadership. I want to thank, you, the select board, for your work on the continuing supporting this effort. I'm 14 months in, to my job there. This is about a 2.5-year-old experiment that we've been playing around with here in Reading. I think that we really moved the needle on a lot. You know, I'm with my colleagues just about 2 times a month across the state, talking about our diversity efforts, talking about really how people are building, how people work in their municipalities who look just like us. So we're all trying to figure it out. But again, I want to say that Reading, we're moving at this really great pace. So it's really good to be working in this town. So again, these 2 buckets. You know, one of the things that we are grounding, the big thing we're grounding our work in is the DEI assessment that we worked with our consultants, opportunity consultants, for about a year. They shared to you, the board, their presentation back in April. And then we really have tried to be intentional about, now, what does this mean for the workforce? Because we engage data from our workforce, and then also what it means for our community. And so for me, I think, you know, my focus for this is really beginning to think about how do we, you know, again, do this engagement, employee engagement piece, and do it well. You know, I think that this is a marathon, not a sprint. So for me, when I think about what we do, how we do this is just equally as important in what. So that's really why I'm excited about having this internal implementation team that's really helping me drive this. These are folks that are on staff, you know, in the town that again, they can meet probably a couple of times a month, either in person or on a Zoom call to help guide some of this work. And a lot of these things under the employee engagement popped up around just being intentional about things like lunch and learns, things like really making sure we have content experts who come in and really help to guide some of these conversations. You know, we got to celebrate this work. You know, again, we recognize oftentimes the DEI is that term that's just been twisted and moved and still misunderstood. And then we want to make sure that we are trying to unpack that and celebrate what we're doing around these diversity efforts. Again, I'm a little biased because I'm getting ready, but I think we're really moving the needle tremendously, quicker than some of the other colleges. They're moving it quick, so I feel good about our work here. You know, a lot of our work sits in customer service. You know, and really thinking about how do we provide that customer service to all our residents in Reading, particularly our diverse candidate, our community members, which oftentimes their voice is not heard at the table. And that's not intentional at all. It's oftentimes just the way it goes. You know, I live in a small town. You know, oftentimes my voice can be not heard. And so we want to, with this office and its efforts, to intentionally engage those communities. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking about how to build culturally competent trainers, you know, really to make sure we're meeting our employees, diverse communities, where they are. Spending time on language. I know that we have made an incredible effort through, you know, our assistant town manager, James, her work around communications. We want to build on that effort around making sure that we're being intentional about having different languages and being offered in different ways of making sure that we're being, again, culturally competent around language. This other bucket around professional services is, again, a lot of continued work that we've been doing. And one of the things I referenced earlier about this assessment that we've done, which I feel really, really good about, what was missing in that assessment, typically what comes after that is a strategic plan. It didn't happen. It's fine. That's why you have Albert come in and help guide some of this. But we really needed to be able to get that work moving because the assessment data is only important as the plan that drives it. So we engaged with the local consultant here who's been doing a lot of this work over probably 15, 20 years and really beginning to now move some of that work along in a strategic kind of way. So we want to continue to support that, things like that, efforts like that, to continue to move along our work. The other piece, as we engage employees, we have to engage our community. This is all our community. So this is not about picking and choosing. And so I think one of the things that we really want to make sure we're doing well with this, and this is kind of where I bring my public health thinking, is we do this work through partnerships and collaborations. There's some existing partnerships that we, existing organizations in Reading that we, the office has begun to partner with. I think we want to be intentional about those partnerships. Again, it costs money to really engage in this in a meaningful way to make sure that we are building sustainable partnerships that can last beyond, you know, just some of the if something happens in the community, this and it happens, we want to move our work beyond that. So, really, really great, exciting part. The church, the faith-based organizations, some of the also smaller community-based organizations, the Lions Club and others. So it's really been great doing that work. And also one of the things I've been celebrating anywhere I go is talk about our really collaborative work with the Reading Public Schools. We've been intentional about doing for the last 2 months, in fact, about another month or so ago, with these listening sessions, where we want to make sure that we're listening to young people and what they have to say about this work. They were missing voice in the assessment, no attentions around that, but they just were missing. So really working with Tom and his team around there to really make sure that we are using all their resources they have internally to make sure that we are listening to young people, and then we're going to provide a report. But also the biggest thing this is going to do is in April, we're going to have a youth town hall at the library, which is really going to begin to youth run to make sure those young people, not just for an event, but really to make sure that they are finding a way for their voice to be heard in all the things that matter to us. Same thing, right? So that works to come cost money. And then finally, the bucket is really, it's not about Albert, but it's about supporting whoever's in this office, really making sure that this office is supported in regards to credentialing and just professional development. There's a coalition that I reference a lot in this body. I'm the co-chair of that coalition. So what that means really in short ways, it really allows me with my colleague Lynn to really help shape the coalition. These are DI directors across the state to really make sure we're having best practices as we're going about doing this work. There's conferences. Again, I'm not a big conference person, but I do believe when you are in other places where you can build out your knowledge base around being with other colleagues, it just helps you and also helps them. It's kind of shared learning. And then finally, a certification. I think these certifications are critically important now more than ever to make sure that we are having best practice, that we're using kind of foundational work that we can build off of. And so again, these are all things that for me that I'm learning a lot from my other colleagues across the state, what they're building in their coalition, in their municipalities. Again, a lot of my colleagues are focused on that internal piece. How do we build and work on, ourselves first before we have to go outward? And again, that's kind of the figure I am with this. At the same time, I recognize, like, it's coming up next month, is that we have probably our biggest celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King, and bringing all our different parts together. So the importance of having an event to bring people together. So again, so more to come, and I'm looking forward to coming before your body, hopefully in a few months to really share a little bit more about our work, but this is really around where that extra money we ask for that.
Okay, thank you, Albert. Next slide, Jackie. So again, just the summary, that's the request, 2.2 million change, 3.6% increase, salaries are 3.2, expenses are 5.4. Just also a reminder that our budget is 1.6% of municipal spending. And it's really not just about maintaining those level services, it's really an investment in our future and ensuring that everybody in our community does have access to the resources that they need. So that's the spiel about the library, and that's our request for FY26. Questions?
Questions
For you or
from
Albert?
anyone? Euler? Chris?
Mark was going to go. Thank you, Amy. Two quick things. So you mentioned the amount of visitors, 173,000. How is that tracked?
Through a door counter.
So
You
like
come
it would-
into the library,
So it counts us when we go into
come in, and
meetings.
when you go, yes, or divides by 2.
And is that up this year compared to last, or how is it tracking?
It's about average. I'd say it's probably, we probably see less foot traffic than 2016 and 2017 when the building opened, but it's leveled off. That was probably closer to 200,000, but it's leveled off around that 160 to 180 kind of thing. It kind of goes, obviously COVID, whew, there was nobody. But yeah, that's pretty average.
And then, I didn't see it mentioned anywhere, but, so the library has an app now.
Yes.
Has that worked out? Do you know how many people have
Well, we
downloaded
would
it?
love
or-
for you to download it and
Yes.
test it. I think with as with anything, it integrates with a third party, our Evergreen, our ILS system. And it integrates also with things like Hoopla and Canopy and some of our other things. It's meant to be a separate thing from our website, which is a different animal. It's used for a different purpose. So we'd love for you to download it and let us know what all the bugs are, because our beta testing was about 4 or 5 people and then, 4 or 5 staff, and that's not a huge testing group. So we'd love for people to kick the tires and just, if you notice something happening, you put something on hold and it doesn't come in, or you can't find something, or you don't maybe like the way something looks, or it's hard to read. Accessibility is a really big thing. So we do want to make sure that, it should be in visual, colorblind, accessible colors. It should be in fonts that are accessible, but a lot of that is in theory. And so we'd love to have people test it out and send comments, so.
Yeah, because I didn't know about it till I just happened to stumble upon it at the
Yeah.
end of the website page, but
Yeah.
at least you actually have something there so people do know that it exists. And
Yes, yeah.
I think, I don't know if I saw a post from the library about it back then, but no, I'll definitely check it out now
Yeah.
and see.
This is a version 2. This is a slightly different version that I think is better. But when you change, well, you know this, when you change anything, everything on the surface that you changed it for, and all those things were great, and then you find out there's 3 things that you forgot about that you need to kind of bring up to snuff. So yeah, please do that.
Thank you.
Quick question. So first, thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you, Albert, for the work you're doing. Looks like you're making some really good progress. In terms of a budget here for a second, so no change in people, right? Same head count? No. Okay, great, awesome. And do the expenses allow you to maintain the accreditation for
Absolutely.
purchases that are required?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the budget is definitely within the municipal appropriation requirement. The biggest increase we had last year, which I asked for, was in that programming because of the community service and budgeting. And now we're like, well, that's not paying for the story time, that's paying for MLK, that's working on bigger programs and bigger initiatives. So it just made sense to sort of separate that out and kind of let Albert have, he already had access to it, but it kind of carves it out into an OESJ budget line.
Well, Albert's kind of a one-man band.
He is, and I just, he didn't really say this, but I just want to say that when we talk about, getting consultants and, whatever, he is a one-man band. So sometimes, there's, I don't want to say, it's not a single point of failure. It's not because it's not failing there, but I do think that it's a stress. There's risk of burnout. There's, falling behind, just needing help, support, implementing a lot of this. He does get a lot of community support. I think all of the departments, have committees and boards that get a lot of community support. But sometimes it's just nice to have someone that you can call and say, can you come over on Tuesday and run a program with the whatever and help out. So I think that that's part of that consulting. Those professional services will help fill in for whether it's design work or strategic planning or just simply running a facilitated discussion.
It's modest, not very
It's
modest.
very modest, but we understand that. We've heard from our fearless leader that, and our wonderful town accountant that we're trying to really control costs.
Always a good thing. Thank you.
Melissa?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and Albert, thank you too for being on Zoom. So just a quick couple questions. I thought Albert was getting someone that was going to be
We've
working
had
with
some
him.
interns, and one we were able to pay out of FY24 with extra money, and that was just a temporary 3-month position. And we had a summer intern that was paid through, she was paid through her college.
Right, maybe I just misunderstood. I thought
Yeah,
someone
no, we
was
have
coming on
no, we have
with him.
no dedicated administrative support.
The quick question, so some of the money is being transferred from programming to the Office of
Yes.
Equity Justice. Do we know what programs we're gonna lose at the library?
We're not going to lose any
Okay,
programming.
we're not.
No, the 6,500 was actually added last year specifically for larger community programs that were meant to be under the OESJ. In 2023, in FY23, we tracked expenses, looked at where we were able to get, you know, community support donations or I think a cultural council grant and that thing. And that was about $11,000. And so then we brought that down to about $6,500, and that was added in FY '25. And so all I'm doing is taking that money that we knew was an increase in cost from OESJ related programs and events and just kind of defining it out.
Got it.
So
Just put it
the
under
original
its own line
library
item.
program budget was always 4,000.
Okay, got it, understand. And then I assume, but I just wanna confirm I'm correct, when Albert's doing training, I assume it's all town staff, not just library staff?
Yeah, so Albert, I don't know if you wanna speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great question, Melissa, and I want to clarify. So this is all, and I use 275 as the number. Could be up, could be down, but this is all the employees for the town. It's why the exercise that we're doing right now is meeting with every department to sit down to decide what their equity goals are, and then that's going to feed into this kind of strategic work as we kind of hear from them. So this is not just library. Again, just to clarify, these positions, obviously, that sit in the library, I'm hopeful that even with my background showing you my town hall offices, hours, is that I'm really trying to be intentional about being with my other colleagues as well outside. But again, that's a long answer to say it's not just library
I
staff.
assumed that, but I was just asking, yeah, I assumed that.
Yeah, they can apologize if that was.
Yeah, no problem. And I just have another quick kind of comment and not really related to budget, but maybe. So I had asked Pat Egan, who I think is behind you too, about this. So recently I had tried to reserve one of the rooms at the library.
Oh, yeah.
It was like the 5-day
Yep.
window before.
Yep.
And I'm trying to logistically understand why, because I feel like people probably don't plan that far ahead, and it could be a source of maybe minimal income for the library, but if you could bring that window down to a shorter period of time.
We could definitely think about it. Right now, we have a 5-day mostly because of the time that it takes us to review the process. Like, I know the schools have 10 days. But there are logistical things of making sure that the person meets the eligibility, making sure the money is paid within 48 hours, that kind of thing. We review the policies every year basically, and we go based on some of that, but a lot of it has just to do with our staffing.
Can I just ask what eligibility would
Yeah,
be needed for?
It's on the,
Sorry,
it's
I
on
don't
the
mean to put you on the
policy.
spot. I
Yep, it
know
has to be,
this
you have
is-
to be a nonprofit or a resident, and it has to be for an education, cultural purpose.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has to go with our mission.
Yeah, and you can only use it so many times per year, and so, someone has to check, have the Cub Scouts now used it, this is their 12th time, or is this their 11th time, or their 10th time? So it goes sort of through that, and it just helps us go through and make sure that everything's sort of vetted for a good reason. So it's not meant to be a private study room or a private meeting room, which we'd love to be able to have and build out. Well, I didn't say build up, I didn't say that. Figure out a way to have private study rooms.
Why couldn't a group like the Cub Scouts use it more than 12 times a year? I guess what's the reason for that?
I think it's just how it's always been, so that people don't use it as a clubhouse and then end up meeting there every single week, and then it's like every Tuesday the Cub Scouts have it. Kind of just lets people have it. But again, we revisit it like every year, and we have changed it. I think at one point it was more than that, and maybe then there were some issues, and
I don't think it's.
no, it's been more than 12. So yeah.
All right,
Yeah, it's
great.
definitely worth thinking about. And I think it's something that any place that has community rooms that can be rented has to go through. They have to look at risk management and liability and safety and all that other stuff. So it is not just a matter of just having the space.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just put in a plug for Matera Cabin because I know sometimes there are no rooms available and I'm not sure Matera Cabin gets all of the visibility it needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a number of, the Scouts, for example, use it a lot, but it's not used, it's underutilized.
Yeah.
So maybe you guys can be like, yeah, also this space.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think you can rent a room at the Pleasant Street Center as well too. So
Yeah.
I think you can rent that.
Yeah, there is a room over there upstairs, yeah.
Yeah. So there's multiple options.
All right, thank you, Amy.
All right.
Joe?
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Huggins. I'm the Director of Facilities for the town of Reading. I have Kevin Kabuzzi, our Assistant Director, with us tonight. Next slide, Jack. So we're going to go through the requested core facilities budget summary tonight, the requested town facilities budget summary, then the combined totals between the two. Kevin's going to talk about work orders by location, our preventive maintenance program, and some project work that was completed last year. We'll talk about the organizational chart and, again, more of the accomplishments. Next slide, please. So, I think everybody knows, but I'll go through it again. I do every year. So the facilities department is responsible for the care and maintenance of all 18 town buildings. That's 10 municipal buildings and 8 schools. We have 2 budgets that we're talking about tonight. The first one we're going to talk about is the core facilities budget, which is basically the maintenance and upkeep accommodated cost to maintain all 18 buildings. Then we have the town facilities budget, which is made up of custodial staff as well as outsourced cleaning. And then a third budget, which you folks aren't voting on, which is the school facilities budget, where we're responsible also for 18 and a half custodial staff that clean all the school building, but that's a separate cost center. So if you look at this first slide right here, salaries are up 5%. This represents salary increases for steps and COLA and collective bargaining agreements. We level funded our maintenance overtime for a total core facilities wages increase of 4%. And there is no adds to the staffing this year at all, just so you know. Next slide, please, Jack. Okay, this next slide here is we're just gonna quickly go through some of our expense, the expense side of the budget. The core energy expense line is up 1%. That's natural gas, water, and electricity. 1% there. Core maintenance repairs is going up 6%. It's going up a little bit this year because of a one-time support for another department. HVAC is going up. Core HVAC expenses is going up 3%. And the reason for that is the equipment is getting older in town. Our equipment is in good shape, but every year, year over year, we are putting more and more money into the systems. We have a really robust preventive maintenance program, but it costs money to do that. So our goal is to make sure that we stay ahead of, any kind of breakdowns on the equipment. Plumbing expenses and electrical expenses are level funded. We have a full-time electrician and a full-time plumber on staff. We're able to do 99% of all the electrical work and plumbing work in-house, which is why we level funded it. That represents a lot of materials and supplies associated with that type of work. Elevator expenses is going up 33%. That jumps out a little bit. We just went out to competitive bid and have a new elevator company in there doing the work. And there was a sharp increase. A lot of it has to do with prevailing wage rates. Year over year, it's all prevailing wage when you do work in the state of Massachusetts. And again, the equipment is getting older. So, and we do maintain our elevators, which a lot of places do not. We have a monthly preventive maintenance program for all of our lifts and elevators in the town of Reading, which is a smart thing to do when you think of the number of elevators we have, which is 17 or 9. We have quite a few in town, 4 at the high school alone, for example. Okay. 12 elevators total. Alarm expenses is going up 25%. When I say alarm, I talk of like intrusion alarms, and I talk of card access and cameras. And every year, because we have a new system that was installed a few years ago, town-wide, we get more and more requests to enhance that system, adding more card readers and more coverage for cameras in areas. And we also have a maintenance contract that's coming up for bid. Fire equipment expenses is level funded. Pest management, I know you folks have been hearing a lot about that. We have an integrated pest management policy through the state of Massachusetts that's in place for all school buildings, the IPM. We have it with Waltham Services, and basically We've been having issues in and around all the buildings, so that program is taking an increase because of the activity that we've been seeing. So we're on top of that, okay?
Joe, real quick, just so I don't forget, why the increased activity, you think?
There's been increased rodent activity. I'm sure you guys have heard that. There's a lot of construction going on. That impacts it quite a bit.
Not by the schools per se.
Not by the schools, but in surrounding neighborhoods and things like that. You do see that. And then in any downtown area, you see that type of activity happen too. And then also it can be wetlands areas and things like that that bring that stuff on.
Could I say,
Yeah.
too, Joe, as long as we're on rats for a second. Given that the health department is looking to do some pretty major activity.
Yep.
Is there at least coordination, so you guys kind of know what's going on between you?
I looked into that and I'm 99% sure, but I will get Matt an answer to report back. It's a separate contract we have for integrated pest management with the schools.
That's what they said.
Yeah, it's totally separate. It has to be filed with the state of Massachusetts, so I don't think there's really an opportunity to combine where it's an IPM, it's registered, licenses and things like that.
Yeah, actually, I don't, hopefully I didn't use the word combine. Coordinate, in other words, understand what one is doing, what the other is doing.
Well, we do
just to
communicate with
know.
Aday and let him know what's going on.
Yeah.
We definitely have a good rapport with him, and we make sure he's aware when we're doing anything, and I've consulted with him several times.
Thank you, perfect.
So,
If I could follow up on that as well, I guess what Mark was somewhat trying to get to is we approved the safe kind of thing for the rat control, et cetera.
Yep.
With whatever program that
Yep.
that person's gonna be doing. Is the schools requiring that you have to use some pesticide type stuff, or are you?
if we use pesticides under the integrated pest management policy, we have to provide a notification. It goes out in the kids' backpacks, or it goes on the website, it goes right to the parents of the community or whatever school it might be. So if we are going to use something like that, there can't be any kids in school when it happens. There are some mild pesticides that they can use while kids are in school, but generally speaking, it has to be when there's no school going on. So we only use safe alternatives around the schools, which is trapping, all right, or bait stations with safe bait.
Because the email that you referenced, I know that somebody forwarded to the board mentioning the pesticide or something that they were gonna be doing. I'm thinking if we're in favor of going the whatever route that we approved last time, is there an opportunity for this to get introduced to the schools as well? So then you don't have to do this? Or are you required by the state to do whatever pesticide or something has to be done?
Exactly.
So-
The pest control company is mandated by the state as to what they can use while kids are in school and when they're out of school. So it's pretty stringent on what they can do.
Okay,
Did that answer your question?
I think so.
I think it's this coordination question. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of, I don't want to use a bad analogy, that's something we want to talk about.
Okay.
Just to make sure, because if there are all sorts of efforts going on that could benefit, maybe it would make sense
Understood.
to coordinate that.
Yep.
Understanding that you've got very different reporting requirements to go
Yes.
through. But it may still make sense.
Okay. All right, I'll talk to Matt about that. So the expense budget is up 3% at the end of the day. The next slide, please, Jack. So this is the town buildings, is the custodial, like I said, the custodial and the overtime budgets are up 2% on this particular budget. Outsourced cleaning services, we're expecting around an 8% increase. That's going out to bid sometime in June. And that's to clean most of the town buildings are covered under this contract for nighttime cleaning, because we only have 4 custodians on the town side. So the total expense budget's going up 6% for a combination of a 3% increase on the town buildings. Next slide, Jackie. So again, like I told you before, this is the combination of the two. The overall increase between the M91 and M92 core facilities and town buildings is 3%, or an overall increase of $150,000. And And then below that, you're looking at the wages and then the expenses for the two cost centers. Okay. I'm gonna let Kevin talk a little bit about work order completion and some other stuff we had completed last year as well as our preventive maintenance program.
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Kabuzzi, Assistant Facilities Director for the town. Thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight to talk about these next few slides. So as Joe mentioned, we got the work orders by location here on all the buildings that we maintain. You can see we're up quite a bit overall, but if you look through that graph, you'll see it ebbs and flows. You're gonna be up in buildings, down in buildings. It changes every year. If you go back historically, you're gonna probably see the same thing. Usually the high school and the two middle schools are gonna be our front runners because they're the biggest buildings, simply. And these work orders could be anything from mechanical equipment breakdowns to custodial activity or work orders for the courier. So we, obviously we had a busy year. We were up 40%, like I said, for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes programmatically, in the schools things change. There's moves, there's build outs, there's things that has to be done to accommodate those programs. So we have to get involved, and it increases the work orders. Next slide, Jackie, please. I want to talk about our Facilities Department Preventive Maintenance Program. This is something that we feel like it's the foundation of our department. We definitely want to be more proactive than reactive. You can't always, you're never going to not be reactive. There's always things that are always going to come up we have to react to, but we try to minimize that through our preventive maintenance program. So I'm not going to hit on every one, but you can see the amount of equipment we have and how often it gets serviced. And then at the bottom there, those last ones are life safety, which, we pay a lot of attention to life safety, obviously. So we're doing our sprinkler testing, our fire alarm testing, the fire extinguishers, our exit signs and emergency lighting. As Joe mentioned, we do our elevators monthly, and I've worked at other places and I can tell you, nobody does them monthly. We do them monthly. Does that mean we never have any elevator breakdowns? No, we have elevator breakdowns, but I think they're minimized by doing the monthly PMs that we do. Next slide, Jackie, please. So this year, we did a lot of projects, end-of-year projects, things that we'd like to try to do to spruce up the buildings. We did a lot of painting this year. I don't know one of them in particular, if anybody's been over to West Side Fire, but we did the whole apparatus bay floor over there, including we did the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Our painting contractor that we have did an excellent job over there. I know they're going to be having an open house over there of sorts on January 4th? January 4th, right. For the antique pumper that they have over there. We actually built a little display area for that, and they're gonna have it open to the public to present that. And we, like I said, we went through that whole apparatus floor and really made that place stand tall. It hasn't had anything done like that in the time that I've been here. So Coolidge, I know you guys were involved with the funding for the fire alarm change over there. We changed the panel at Coolidge. And quite a few of the devices, it wasn't a complete system changeover, but I'm very happy to say that since we did do the panel and the devices that we changed, it's cut way back on the amount of calls that we've had over there, nuisance calls. So that was a big plus to get that done. We did some new doors at Town Hall. I don't know if you're aware, but those two doors right there were replaced, and we did that in-house. With one of our carpenters was able to do that, and he did the door out to the courtyard. We did Birch Meadow. I don't know if anybody's got kids that go to Birch Meadow. I think, Chris, you do, correct?
Yeah.
We did extensive exterior painting over there. It was needed, and I think it really made the building pop over there, We know that building was built in, I think it was a 57, Joe? Yeah. 57, so we haven't done any exterior painting there. Well, we've done some railings and whatnot, but we did the trim all the way around the building. We painted the loading dock, the stairs. We did all the railings over, any trim that needed to be painted over there got done. So that was a really big project, really made it look nice over there. I think we do this with contractors and we do it with our own guys, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, you know, we're very fortunate to have the staff that we have, between the 4 maintenance staff, people that we have, 4 town custodians, 18 school custodians in total. But in particular, our 4 maintenance guys, they cover a lot of ground over the year. And these guys are very good at what they do, but they're also not afraid to step outside the box and help another trade, or, you know, get something done, get even something to just carry us over until we can get that area of expertise vendor in here to you know, rectify the problem permanently. So that's about all I have tonight. Joe, you want to take the next one?
Thanks, Ken. Okay, Jackie. So like I said, there's no adds to the, that's our organizational chart. And again, like Kevin had mentioned, you know, we have, we run pretty lean over in facilities. We think we do. We get a lot of work done. And the buildings, I think, show it. The buildings are in good condition. So that's all we really have for you guys tonight. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
So Melissa first. Melissa?
Just a couple of questions. Thank you both for the presentation. I appreciate it. Another pest control question, I'm sorry. So the 29% increase, is that mostly because costs are just rising, or
It's
are we
visits. It's
seeing?
more visits than anything.
So what do we think is driving the pest issues at the schools? Is it one school
It's
over
not just the
others?
schools, it's schools and town buildings,
Okay, all right, so it's both.
over 18 buildings.
Okay, all right, that's fair,
Yep.
and we know we're having the issues in other
Yep.
parts of the town, okay. One thing I noticed is the work orders for Wood End seem considerably high considering the age of that building this year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, like Kevin was saying, a lot of it has to do with any kind of project work we do. If there's, like I know over at that building, they brought another program in there over the summer, and they're using 2 classrooms over there.
They're using 2 classrooms.
Two
Yeah, that's
classrooms.
kind of what I was talking about. They're not necessarily maintenance issues. A lot of that was moves, because they took up 2 big classrooms there. We moved stuff out. That program mainly moved their own stuff in, but we did have some work to do in conjunction with that.
So it's not necessarily maintenance.
No,
Exactly.
no,
Okay.
exactly.
All right,
Yep.
awesome. That's what I was trying to check. Yeah, that's all I have, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Karen?
Thank you both. So is Town Hall entryway like gonna be painted next year, maybe? Cause it's been a
Town
long
hall,
time.
what was that?
Right out here, right out here. I think you guys did some work on the doors this year, which looked nice.
Yeah,
Front
we did,
doors?
we actually did, we painted, the exterior of town hall, we did a lot of paint
We
work.
did some exterior paint work this year. We
Nice.
did do that stairway once several years back.
Yeah, and
have
we did
done
the
it.
one over this end last summer.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, we rotated. We have to, if money wasn't an object, believe me, we'd be doing way more painting than we do. And like painting is like, it's a nice to have, but it also makes a big difference in the way your building looks. And that's why every couple of years, we try to hit it as hard as we can and spread it across all the buildings. And Kevin really didn't mention you in the essence of time, but you know, we did a lot of paint work everywhere this year. Police station was another one. We did work here at Town Hall. This is a brick building, wood with wood. So we're constantly on this building, making sure that the facade of the building is in good shape, and then coming inside and doing work.
Is this vestibule? It's pretty dated.
Yeah,
I'd love to maybe see that next year.
okay, we'll get it
and
on
then-
the list.
All right, thank you. And then I was wondering, I'm sure Matt has some input too. We don't wanna leave him out.
No, we've been talking about that for a while, so I agree. It could use a sprucing up for sure.
I think it's noticeable when it's kind of beat up when you walk in, but then you see the other areas that have been done. I
Yep.
think it's more noticeable.
Yep.
So I was just gonna ask you about your, I don't have any past questions, but getting back to your maintenance plans, so the heat pumps are starting to add up. 2 schools, the fire station's got some heat pumps, the police station's got heat pumps. Probably get the high school somewhere too. So,
Just about every school has some. I mean,
We've been using
it-
heat pumps for the last 12 years now, 12, 13 years.
so I didn't see any breakouts on how those are serviced annually. Are they wrapped under something else?
They're part of the HVAC
Right.
contract, that there's not a lot of PM on those, other than washing the condensers, which would happen during a PM. And a lot of those, the filters are washable, so the guys just pull them. I was at the library the other day with the custodial staff there, going over that with them. And a lot of the ones over there, you just pull them out, wash them, vacuum them, put them back in.
Yeah, it can get a little more involved. There are some sections where molds can grow, and I haven't done it my year. I'm watching the guys doing it. So, well, I mean, that may be what they're doing so far, but and if that's all they're doing, just giving you a heads up, there are like there's some sections that it's an add-on service for me to really get in there, and when he's like, come look at this, isn't it hard? There's like mold in there. I'm like, okay, I'll get that scheduled too, so.
Yeah, and what you're more talking about is a ducted system, and if you're talking about like a conventional,
No, I'm talking about heat pumps.
okay, well, two things. If you're changing the filters and you're doing it on a regular basis, and you're doing it like 3 times a year, which we do, that really minimizes any issues that you have. If you're not doing it, and you've got dirty filters in there, then you can run into a problem. So that's why we're doing it 3 times a year, which is,
Oh,
quite
so you're
frequently.
doing it 3 times a year.
3
I'm only
times.
doing it annually. Okay.
Yeah,
No,
the-
3 times a
The
year.
filters and the general PM gets done 3 times a year.
Like, it collects dust and stuff, they gotta.
And sometimes if if we have a really high pollen year, we've done a
Yeah.
4th.
Yeah, okay,
So,
okay. Alright, just curious, cause it's not broken out separately. So it's not like unit ventilators. You might need a new bullet for next year, that's all.
okay.
Great, thank you, it's a lot of work.
Thank you.
Is there a reason was there a problem with the elevator service company that we were using? You just mentioned going out to bid.
The elevator company that we had was in the second of a 3rd year contract, and we did not renew them.
Okay.
They were not asked to come back.
And then,
Went out to bid. And the company we've used in the past, and we've had great success with them. So we were happy to get them back on here.
I should have asked this last year too. Have we spent all the money that we approved at town meeting for security?
Yes,
Probably a while back.
yes.
Just make sure.
Now we're gonna have to kill you.
Tiffany?
Top secret stuff.
No, I'm gonna ask my rat questions. I can go over that again if we want.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.
That was Kevin Gerson, I don't want to. There's 2 Kevins.
Two
now.
Kevin.
Kevin, you're up.
Another Kevin.
Another Kevin.
Sorry about that. My name is Kevin Ferrella. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the town's technology department. I'm joined tonight by Jen Ioshawa. She's the Assistant Department Head for the technology department as of July.
Welcome, Jen.
I'm here to present our Level 1 Technology FY26 budget. Next slide. Jackie, thank you. So this is the same as it is every year. The technology department is responsible for providing and maintaining the necessary computing and telecommunications infrastructure and systems that the various town departments use in a secure and thoughtful manner. Additionally, we have a GIS system that we maintain that provides the various departments, boards, committees, commissions with mapping, custom mapping, and more detailed data analysis. That's going to be the way it is next year. Sorry that we talk about that same slide every year, but that's just the way it is. What sets this technology department apart from maybe one that you're accustomed to are the customers that we have, the departments that we support. We support finance, we support facilities, and the typical departments a company will have. But we also have public safety, police, fire, health, DPW, public library, and that's a diverse and unique set of customers, and that's really what's different about us. Jackie, next slide. And this is our team. We're the smallest department you'll meet tonight. We have 5 people. We're fully
Bigger than I
staffed.
thought, though.
We're fully staffed. This is the same group that we had last year when I presented. Like I mentioned, Jen is our technology manager, assistant department head. She takes a lot of, she's taken a lot more responsibility on over the last year, even leading up to the position change. She's in charge of our phone system, and today she did a portion of a project to migrate us off to more redundant, less expensive pathways for our phone system to leverage. And, you know, she takes on our permitting, our financial back-end support. And, you know, there's a lot that she has on her plate, and we're also trying to overlap with other people in our department as much as we can. The next person in our group is Matt Dean. He's our GIS administrator. If you see any mapping that's a little bit more sophisticated, maybe they've got little rats on the map, or maybe data analysis has been done. They,
Guide to Reading.
they probably pass through Matt's hands. Next up is Tim Johnson. You've probably met him. He's the most customer-friendly member of our group.
Is he the one rescuing us at our community meetings?
He is.
Yeah,
He's-
okay.
Yeah, he's the one we
making
like
sure.
to lead with so that we all seem polite and professional. He's taken on a tremendous amount. He's really grown into the role, and he's in charge of you know, one of our accounts that's a 72,000 cellular. We did a big cellular migration because the carrier we were using wasn't cutting it in town, and so he was responsible for a lot of that. And the last one on the list is Kevin Connors. He's the most recent addition. He's been here for a little bit over a year. He comes from the medical industry, at least technology-wise, and comes from an environment that supported clean rooms and had a lot more bleeding edge technology than we have here. And so we're fortunate to be able to leverage some of the solutions that he comes in with knowledge of, and we've already adopted a few of them. Next slide, Jackie. So this is the services provided. They're basically two categories. There's the supporting services, the things that really nobody really cares about, the network infrastructure, the DNS servers, the virtualized infrastructure, the behind-the-scenes things that need to exist so that the directly consumed services can be used. The email or the financial platform or the CAD system over at the police department. Those are the two groups of what we do, and it will be the same next year, and I apologize for that, but it's not as exciting as some of the other departments tonight. Jackie, next slide. And so I want to get ahead of really the big story for our budget this year. This is the current fiscal year. This is what what was approved last year, plus a little bit of an ask that occurred in town meeting in November that was approved. Jackie, next slide. And this is what we're proposing. And, separately, they don't really tell a story, but Jackie, if you go to the next slide. This is the comparison of those 2 years. And this is the unfortunate part, and especially after watching all the other departments come up here and be so responsible with their percent increases. I feel I owe everybody an apology across the departments, but this is the reality we're facing. Salaries are pretty much in line with what the guidance was given from FinCom, but expenses are obviously out of line. And so I'll explain why that is in a subsequent slide, but overall we're at 8.1%. That is what it is. That's not, despite what I'm about to say, that captures what we're asking for here. Jackie, next slide. If we're talking about Fantasy World, this is what it was going to be. It would be a 3.2%. There are two major changes, though, that account for the big difference in what we're seeing. Jackie, next slide. And so the difference is explained. I'll explain the second one first because it's easier. When Chief Clark was up here the other night, he mentioned $5,000 reduction in one of his accounts, and this is the $5,000 increase in one of our accounts. So from the town's perspective, it's a wash. That's the good news. That is a print. Actually, that's one of the things that Kevin Connors, the newest addition to our group, he spearheaded that effort. For the town, we are paying the same with a new contract for service and supplies that we had been paying for just the supplies. And he also managed to get 3 months for free and 4 devices that got us $10,000 extra. And it's a good change just to make everything under one account. We've done that transfer. The second thing is not so great. The security system that Joe mentioned in his presentation was installed a few years ago. The COVID times didn't seem like the ideal time to do a project, but in this instance it was. A lot of the buildings were empty. A lot of the doors needed to be outfitted with new hardware. A lot of cables needed to be run. So it was great timing for that project to take place. It came with 3 years of software support. That 3 years is expiring in FY26, and that's where the $54,000 comes from. That's 3 additional years. I would have liked to have done it just year to year. That would have been $18,000 if we divided, but that's not the way the software company deals with it. It would be $7,000 more per year, so $21,000 over 3 years if we hadn't, if we're choosing not to opt into the 3-year. That is explaining that horrendous jump in percentage. I equate it to the parking enforcement charge. It's a charge that has to land somewhere. I wish it landed with facilities, to be honest. When he was saying this, it could have landed at any department though, police, wherever you'd think, security, access control. But it is software, so it's appropriate that it's landing with me.
It's not horrendous, it's needed.
Yeah, but when I see Amy come up and give her presentation and see all her numbers following the FinCom's guidance, it does feel nice.
Next year, 3 years, move it there.
So
No, she's already looking at, how do I get my printer to on our budget line over there too?
Oh, no, we're covering staff. We're covering staff at the library.
Great.
Jackie, next slide. And so, I know I'm doing this a little bit backwards, but I needed to get in front of that percent change, make sure that if we needed to discuss it, that we had time. For our expenses, I can talk in detail about what makes up each one of these, but I've sort of grouped them by how I saw them to be appropriate. Software licenses or hosted solutions. Those are the licenses needed for our self-hosted solutions or the subscriptions for the cloud-based solutions. When you look at $492,000, you figure you must own every piece of software there is. But there's big chunks of that are consumed by individual packages. Our financial platform is $112,000, and that's for the licensing and the maintenance for that piece. Our Microsoft licensing is $65,000 for the year for the users that we have. The security system's $54,000, the permitting systems is $54,000, the facilities work order systems are $22,000. So you can see, I've already listed off enough to be greater than half of that. So it's not that many solutions that have the price really tick up there. Communication lines, those are all the lines that are necessary to connect us to the outside world. $72,000 for wireless communication or cellular connections, about $40,000 for landlines or, for everything like elevator lines, alarm lines, or PRI telephone lines, internet service connections. They're all in the communications area. Hardware parts and supplies for $95,000. That's all the traditional IT stuff. Desktops, laptops, monitors, mice, keyboards, mouse mats, pens, whatever you think that we're handing out or supplying, that's captured there. Outsourced services, we're much like the facilities department. We're sort of proud in the fact that we take care of a lot of what we do in-house. We do have to outsource about $55,000 though to people that, just for the tasks that we can achieve. Fiber optic cables need to be moved on a telephone pole. I'm not doing that, so I've got a fear of heights and it's not appropriate. So, Jackie, next slide. Something that Chris asked last year, sorry that it's a year to get around to this, but you had asked about wireless maybe in place of our fiber network. And so I did reach out to our vendor that does both. He'll take our money for either solution. So to explain how we got here, we had a little hub and spoke fiber network when I started. So 22 years ago, we had a little, just connecting town hall to police and fire, library, very small scale. We had contract negotiations with the cable companies And they wanted to get out of the old copper iNet system that they maintained, they supplied and supported. It's what RCTV would leverage to broadcast. They didn't want to be in that business. So we negotiated $250,000 to install a fiber network to connect all our town and school buildings. And that's what, that foundation is still there today. It's as fast as we will probably ever need it. And it's not, it doesn't degrade. Occasionally it needs repairs, but I'll talk about that in a second. We've been building upon that over the years, and small changes here and there. 2 years ago, though, we were awarded a fiber grant for $200,000 to really make a significant leap as far as the capacity and hitting a couple of other areas in town, like the new water tank, to put it on the network, whether it's a SCADA system or public safety radio system. The ways we're leveraging it are pretty diverse. And then just this year, we got another grant for $140,000 to further increase it. We're going to have fiber going down Main Street underground, and we're going to increase our strand count there and create a little bit of a redundant loop at the same time. So this is a real important piece of infrastructure for the town. To Chris's question last year, if we do find ourselves in a situation, maybe down at like the compost center, which used to be our old water treatment plant, and we needed to get connectivity there, it might be more cost effective to stand up a wireless solution in that instance rather than drag fiber down the road. That would probably be too expensive to justify. Our yearly maintenance for this network is split between DPW and technology. It's about $16,000, but much like any atrocious storm occurring, that puts the DPW's budget out of whack, we could experience like an ice storm that took down a lot of poles that would seriously impact our fiber network and probably have the repair costs for that go through the roof. So we have enough money to maintain, but if there were ever something catastrophic to impact all the poles in town, we would be in a tough spot. Jackie, next slide. And then there's a couple of other grants. We just finished up an electronic document storage migration for $85,000, and we had an issue where the software had an incompatibility with the operating system it was running upon. 2 weeks ago, the vendor addressed that. They had a fix for it. It's been up and running. Laura told me right before this meeting that Melissa might have reported that it wasn't. I did confirm that it is still up and running, so we do have a few weeks under our belt of stability. One thing that is yet to be done, though, is a security certificate, and that might be the thing that you were encountering. We purchased a security certificate, it just needs to get installed. Yep.
Yeah, I need to join in. I don't want to keep complaining about the same thing, but I am frequently, doesn't matter what week, it's unpredictable, hitting that system and it comes up with the error message. It's pretty damn frustrating.
As of 2 weeks, we haven't had, every time we've encountered the incident, we've had to reboot the server. Nothing short of that has, and we'd proactively check on it and reboot, but usually it was reactive, hearing a report in through Laura or some other pathway, and we restart it, and then it's good for maybe a day, maybe a week, but it was real unpredictable. We do feel confident that the fix that was applied is holding, at least for 2 weeks now, and that's not the experience we had leading up to the fix, but I'm hopeful that we're on the software had an incompatibility with Microsoft.NET, which is something that it's built on top of.
Okay.
And so the software had to have a resolution, a patch, a configuration file and a couple of
That would
files.
be great, because really, I like, it's been.
Yeah, I was really excited to talk about
Okay.
that success story until I
Alright.
walked in, and then I was like, oh my
I'm
goodness.
excited.
But I
I'm
did
gonna go
check.
test it. I'm gonna beta test it.
Yeah, do, and reach out to me if you find that it's not
I'll
the
be looking
case,
for stuff from
because
2012.
in the testing I've done so far, it seems to be stable, and
Okay,
including before I walked in, and I didn't touch it, I didn't restart it before I walked in. It was accessible to the outside world, so.
Okay, because I love telling residents to go on the town website and go check out our packet and
Okay,
when
so
they.
that's a security certificate. If you click on advanced and then continue,
So
and that's a known issue that we have purchased a security certificate for, and
So what does that mean?
That's the last piece of it, is you're prompted with a warning, like be careful about going through there.
Oh, okay,
Because it's not encrypted in a trustworthy way.
okay,
We're self-encrypting it.
Yeah.
But we've purchased a real certificate for this need, and we just have to install it, so.
Okay.
That should be wrapping up that effort, and should serve us for 5 years, 4 years.
At least 5, 6.
So, and Laura's a tremendous resource because she knows the software inside and out, and we really lean on her for.
and she gets the calls.
Yeah, she actually does. We only get the system outage calls, so we're fortunate for that.
Thank you.
We also have a cybersecurity project grant that we were awarded that has not taken place yet. I'm not talking about that. The cybersecurity awareness training, every year we're awarded the state's we are awarded a grant to participate in the state's program. All of our users get cybersecurity awareness training, and that helps with our cyber liability insurance. They want to see that. A lot of times a company really fortifies their gates and puts up systems to block people coming through the door. The users are the windows that they've decided to crawl in through. That's how most people are exploited these days, is targeting the end user. And so that training is real valuable for us. Jackie, next slide. And then my favorite part of this whole presentation. So we have, it's funny how things work out, because in 2019, we were to upgrade some of the AV equipment in our locations. It was time, that we had gotten enough time out of them, and for whatever reason, it got pushed off to 2020, and that was just ideal, because the solution we would have had in 2019 is much different than 2020. We would have been tossing some things out and spending additional money. In 2020, when we had a need for remote participation, we couldn't get an AV company in here to take our money. They were too busy taking up, they had bigger customers, to be honest. And so we not only had to do something that we could, like a homegrown solution, but something that we could install, something that we can maintain and support and troubleshoot. And that's how we've landed with the equipment that's in here now. Enough time has passed where we are now circling back and polishing that stuff up. Mark has mentioned this at 2 previous meetings. On the heels of the last meeting, I approached Fidel and I said, how do we do this? Like, there's no money sitting there. And he said, I'm not sure. Good luck. And so I met with Matt about this, and we had to get real creative. There is no money sitting aside for this. And but we were able to get, creative and in a way lucky. And so that's what you're seeing here. Pleasant Street Center, they spent some ARPA funds on their AV system upgrade, and that's installed and running. The company is still here working out some bugs. They had a microphone that wasn't working for bingo night the other day, or bingo day the other day, and that wasn't great. You can't hear the numbers called, you might not win. So,
Right.
But the vendors come back and they're polishing these solutions up. The Reading Public Library, they just outfitted both their community room and the lower level conference room with, video conferencing solution. And unfortunately, if you were part of the financial forum, you experienced what I think is our first failure here, where the equipment didn't allow the meeting to take place in the room that it was scheduled. That's frustrating to us because it's the first time we've relinquished control to a vendor for these meetings. We average about 800 to 1,000 virtual meetings a year. This year we're at 400,000 minutes, which is right under 7,000 hours of virtual meetings. So to have that first failure that couldn't take place in the room be right when you handed off control to a vendor was just frustrating. But they are over there, including I think this week, further adjusting the system. Board of Trustees meeting had some feedback issues last night that weren't appreciated. So, and then the last but not least is the select board room. I had wanted a scheduled date for this. We don't have one other than vaguely February. And so, Mark offered to bring in his home karaoke machine to troubleshoot this issue.
Still good.
Yep, Mark wants in-room amplification, so do I. The problem is we have RCTV with sailing mounted microphones. We have our remote participation, video conferencing system. The audio is really complicated once you have that. You need a digital signal processor to take this and make sure that there's not feedback issues. So we did appreciate the karaoke machine offer. It's just It's not appropriate for the other needs of the room, but we're real hopeful that some of this less polished equipment starts to look a little bit more presentable. There'll be a TV there for presentation, there'll be a TV over here for the audience to see, or maybe so Matt doesn't have to be looking behind him during every presentation. There'll be wireless gooseneck mics, there'll be, I can talk at length about the solution, but we should be in good shape, and I appreciate you egging me on and pushing me to the finish line, so it's, Jackie, next slide. And so, this is the summary slide. This is the same as it was last time. It's really, we're here to support all the other departments. Without all the departments, we're pretty useless. Unless robots take over, and then we're the most useful, but that's a few fiscal years away. So with that, I guess I'd like to ask if there's any questions or, yep.
Thanks, yeah. So I gave a plug for my Terra cabin earlier. I don't think there's any Wi-Fi up there, and I know there's none of this equipment up there. But people do need meeting space, and I don't know how complicated it needs to get, but
Yeah.
whether it's wireless or wired, is that something we might be able to think
Yeah, well,
about next year?
Yeah, coincidentally, we do have our fiber network pulled right up to the top of the hill because there's a public safety radio system antenna there. So we might be able to jump right on our network, but short of that, we do have a Windstream line, a Verizon line pulled into Matera Cabin. We'll just have to talk about how that gets paid for. We might be able to just turn on regular Verizon wireless.
I think that would be a huge improvement. That's much appreciated by whoever uses it and help us get more use out of it.
Yeah, and so just to illustrate the advantage of the fiber network, if we did tie into the fiber network, they'd be able to leverage our existing internet connection for nothing. And so that's what we have done at all of the other town buildings and what the school is doing in a comparable way over in the school system.
Great.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin, for everything and for jumping on that. Will that solution with the wireless mics, et cetera, that'll allow amplification in the room
Oh, yeah.
as well as connection to
Yep.
RCTV, Zoom?
Yep. It does something called steps up the volume of a person's voice. So if I'm standing here talking, it will be subtle, but it will be in the ceiling mounted speakers and just enough to, and that can be adjusted, but just enough to get it so people can hear. And that same feed goes out to the RCTV broadcast and to the remote
Nice.
participants on a video conference call.
Does the OWL still play a role in the new solution, or?
Well, there's no reason that it couldn't, but we'd have to talk about that. We do what our customers are looking for. So if that's a value, then that's what we do.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know if things had advanced since 2020.
You wanna know
Yeah.
who would be responsible?
Oh,
Oh, sorry. Wow, that was a funny one.
I was
It's only 8:15.
later, different parts of the world.
Chris?
Thanks, Carl. I feel like I could go over all this stuff ad nauseum, but I'll skip the ad nauseum part. Real quick on Matera, the only real solution is if inexpensive solution is if the water tower had wireless, then anything that sees the water tower, you'd be able to do. So in theory, if my company was doing it, if the water tower already had wireless up there, then adding Matera Cabin on is like $300, because it's the enterprise access point over to there and you're donezo, like super easy. So the whole, and then like you mentioned, saving the money because it'd be on your network here instead of spending $100 for a Verizon line monthly or whatever it would have to get done over there. So it would be good to see if the fiber solution, like you said, got pulled up there. But like I said, who knows how much it takes to get from there over to Matera. But you have to kind of work that out. The 54,000 thing pains me because I seek open source where stuff isn't paid, where my clients that I have aren't paying for anything for licensing. I'm sure it's a little bit different here with the security that you have, but does the 54 grand include access controls and cameras all in one program? Or is that broken out between like 2 different programs that you're using it for?
Yeah, that 54,000 captures the licensing that's needed for the number of access control points that we have and for the number of cameras that we have. I'm uncertain, like if Joe went through a big effort to really outfit one of the schools with a larger number of cameras, which I don't see as being the case because they really built out a robust system when they installed it. But if that were to really spike number of, access control points or cameras, that's going to send my licensing up. What the licensing does cover is what we do have as far as all those components are concerned.
But the cameras and the access control would work without the license. You'd just be on an older version of it with no support though, right?
Oh, are you talking about the physical cameras?
No, I'm talking about the software licensing for it.
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts. There's the software licensing that exists on the cameras. So like an access camera might have software that's on it. And you're right, it exists without a system. To connect that system, to connect that camera to the system costs a license. And I agree with you, it is unfortunate to see all these packages have the price really climb. But the package that we got was selected because of how flexible it is with what it can support. That's their claim to fame, is they can support any device known. And then just to circle back to your wireless connection, we did bring fiber up to the tank. We do know that that's a great position for wireless. That would be where, we'd put, if we were doing a point-to-point wireless, that is where we'd put it. They're currently capturing water meter readings from the tank, and I think they're able to capture 70% right out of the gate without any effort. So it's ideal for that type of use, like you were saying.
I just know with 54 grand spending it on licensing, that's 54 grand of cameras that you are not getting. It's 54 access control that you're not getting. You're just, torching it on licensing. I know licensing exists for a reason, because same thing with the Microsoft licensing, that's been going up. I understand that you have to pay all that. So do I, even though I hate licensing. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. Is VoIP done in-house too? Do you have your own hosted
It is.
here, or?
Yep,
So
we
you're
had
saving
a-
money that way?
Yep.
By doing it in-house?
Yeah, we have a self-hosted controller, as does the school department.
Okay.
And that's part of the project that Jen was in charge of today. We moved it from our PRI trunk to, over a couple of internet connections. So that will save us, to reduce, to eliminate a trunk and just leverage the internet will be a cost benefit.
And then my last question's on the email. Do you know when we're getting swapped over to the easy readingma.gov email instead of
Okay.
whatever wonkiness
Yeah, I don't
we've
want
had
to
forever?
I don't want to impact the migration in any way, but if somebody were to send you a message right now with the readingma.gov domain, it will arrive at your email box. You still present yourself with outgoing messages at ci.reading.ma.us, but you will receive messages to either address, so you could start publicizing that. We are doing 120 accounts over the coming week. A lot of police, fire, DPW accounts are getting migrated. On the heels of that, I'll reach out to I think we have 4 remaining select board members to sign up for multi-factor authentication. Once that's done, it's just a flip of the switch and we hand off the instructions. Real straightforward. If all else fails, if your laptop connection or your phone connection doesn't work, you could go to outlook.com after the migration. So we shouldn't be that big of a panic during the migration of your accounts.
I'll just call Chris.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you got your new monitor, by the way.
I did, but I hit that one.
Oh, perfect.
Sharon is next.
Good work, Kevin.
So I have Jackie running my slides. It's good to see you guys in person. I almost always see you by Zoom because I'm trying to multitask.
From upstairs?
Yes, I'm always trying to get work done while other people are talking, but I thought it'd be nice to be here in person tonight. Next slide, please. I'm gonna start with the finance budget and then we'll be going into shared cost and then obviously the spending scorecard that is our budget summary. So this first slide is the org chart for finance department, and when I was looking at my presentation, I realized that when I went to add our new position that we asked for at November town meeting, that there's a position that's always been part of finance for many years that was never part of the org chart because it's not paid out of finance, it's paid out of benefits, but they answer to the treasurer. And that is the benefits analyst position. So one of the largest expenses outside of salaries is benefits. And so years ago, we kind of made the case that we have 1,561 members of our health insurance. And we've always done before we had this position, we did that reconciliation every month in the finance department, person by person. So for 561 people, we made sure that the deductions matched the bill, that the bill was appropriate so that we didn't lose any money. We did not want to bleed cash. And we made the justification that having this person would save the town money because you only have so much time to go back to Maya and say, you billed us incorrectly and have them corrected. So he pays for himself really because he does all of our reconciliations of our health insurance, our life insurance, our dental, and he makes sure that people are charged appropriately for the plan that they're on and that Maya charges us the right amount so that we don't overpay as a town, that the employee pays their share and that the town pays theirs. So I apologize for never including him. He does not work in our department, but then I realized there are a couple of people that are on this slide, like the assistant collector, who's paid out of water sewer, because they do all the water and sewer billing. I mean, that's why assistant collector is paid from there, but they are part of the finance department. So I figured this year I would be very inclusive, include everybody that works in finance. There's 16 people, but 3 of them do not get charged to my finance budget, and the other person is the assessor. The assessor is in a regional position, so he covers 3 communities, which would be Wakefield, which is his home base here, and Linfield. And so we reap the benefit of a regionalization for our assessor. Next slide, please. So we have 12.93 positions that are actually paid out of finance, and this would include our new treasury analyst position that I mentioned. If you recall at November town meeting, I asked other department heads if I could redirect the savings from their department to create this position because finance is probably the most voluminous area for work, and we do a lot there, and we were really struggling, especially taking on the budget, and I still wasn't able to train my assistant department head on budget because she's that busy, we're both that busy. So this treasurer analyst should be helping with cash reconciliation so that we can be properly cross-trained. I don't like having vulnerabilities like that. We're a good group in that everybody in the group is willing to be cross-trained in different things, but some things are just too big to be cross-trained when you have a full-time job, and so we really do need another position to help us out there. So we've been very fortunate. Our group has been very loyal. People that have been with us 28 years. We just got a great group of girls up there that I'm just incredibly grateful for. Well, Victor's not a girl, but Victor's not my employee. So we're very grateful for the hard work that they do and their willingness to just step outside what their job description is and fill in where needed. And that's why we're able to be successful. Next slide, please. So this is the general finance key responsibility. So when I say general finance, I'm referring to the treasury function, which is your treasurer and assistant treasurer, and then your collector. So the collector's office has 4 people that work there, and then you have 2 people in treasury. So, and so all this work that's listed here and probably more is done by those 6 people. So the payroll is done by 1 person. It's done bi-weekly, about 1,200 employees on average. And then cash management and reconciliation is done by the treasurer and with some help from her assistant treasurer, but she does all the payroll as well. And so that's a big task because cash management for the town, RMLD, and retirement. So we're talking about $380 million of funds that she manages and reconciles over 60 accounts every month. So we're not talking small dollars and we're not talking small volume. And then we do all the state and federal reporting, so that would include our 941s for our quarterly payroll reporting. We do the payroll for also RMLD and retirement, not their retirees, but their employees over there, so we're doing reporting for them in RMLD. And then we're also doing the W-2 reporting, the 1099 reporting, 1099-Rs, and then also the 1095-Cs, which is the Affordable Care Act. There's a lot of work that goes into the federal and state reporting. So I kind of leave it there and I say that, and I never really explain how involved it is. Debt issuance, so we do all the debt issuance for the town. Currently, RMLD does not have any debt, but if they were to issue under the town, we would manage that as well. We do quarterly property tax billing of 9,401 properties through our collector's office. And we do the utility billing. So the water and sewer billing is done in the collector's office. And I recently learned that they do more than just the billing, but some extra stuff that we're trying to kind of redirect in terms of scheduling some of the water sewer people to go out when there's problems and answering a lot of questions related how the meter works, they just somehow end up in the collector's office. So we're trying to redirect some of the work just to kind of keep that volume down, because in the collector's office, they process 128,000 payments a year. And the majority of them are processed soup to nuts by the collector's office. The departments do process their departmental receipts, but every single receipt that's received by the town eventually is verified and posted by the collector's office. So it's no small task. There's 4 people in there and they're processing that level of payments. Next slide, please. The assessing office, this is their key responsibilities: valuation of real and personal property, field review and data collection on the properties. They do all the administration of the statutory and local property tax exemptions. They do the billing for motor vehicle excise tax, which is about 22,500 bills last year. And they do all the abatements for property tax and motor vehicle. They do maintenance of all the property tax records, and they do the tax classification presentation to the select board every year and the general public. And they advertise and administer the senior tax relief program that's been highly successful here in Reading. Next slide, please. And in the accounting function, there is me, assistant town accountant, and then 2 administrative staff. That 2 administrative staff process 26,000 bills a year, about 500 invoices a week. So I'm so impressed by the volume that they do and still manage to find time to help me wherever they can. So I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am for them. So we do our monthly budget reporting to the department heads, so they get all of their year-to-date budget reports on a monthly basis from our staff, and they're prompted when things look like they might be a little running awry. Maybe you're charging something the wrong line. We're prompting them and helping them with their budgets, and that's what the budget and oversight and support is. We're like the key players for Munis. We're like the power users, so we help all the other departments when they struggle with our financial software. And I set personally all the security settings to keep people out of what they're not supposed to see. And then the tax recap, I do the tax recap with the assessor, but I also have trained my assistant town accountant on doing this process too. So she's been involved every year. I'm sure if I wasn't there, she'd be very nervous to do it by herself, but she is very much familiar. Free cash calculation, she's also involved in that, as well as the Schedule A reporting. She usually starts the process and I help her tie everything out and make sure everything. The fact that I have that assistant town accountant that I can delegate to has really helped me to be able to take the budget on. She really pulls her weight and more. Then we do financial analysis and reporting, and we compile all the audit requests for the auditors. Next slide, please. So the overall budget for finance is going up 2.99%, just under 3%, 3.57% in accounting. We're going down by 18.39% in assessing, and I'll explain that when we get to the slide. And general finance going up 6.46% for a grand total of 2.99%. Next slide, please. So in the salary area, all of the staff in finance are non-union employees. They get a step and a COLA. The steps for non-union employees, if you're a management level staff, it's 2.5% the step and 2.35% if you're non-management staff. So the range would be between 3.6% and 3.75%. So accounting is at 3.6%, assessing at 3.34%, and general finance looks a little wonky. And when I explained the fact that when we had somebody for 9 months working 19 hours a week helping us in finance, the person actually worked in administrative services as an operations specialist. So there was $20,000 within the budget administrative services that now has to be transferred in fiscal '26 to finance to make our full-time position. So it looks a little wonky, but if you remember, the administrative services mentioned our operations specialist is going away because it's becoming part of the finance group. And so that's why those numbers look a little bit high, but that's what's going on there, is that treasury analyst that we've added is making that number look a little wonky because not the whole budget was here in fiscal '25. And next slide, please. So for the expense budget, the big thing that's going on there, accounting is level funded, assessing is going down by 18.39%. So when we were building the fiscal '25 budget, our regional assessor was doing 3 communities, but the third community was pretty new to him and it was a struggle. And he was thinking, I'm not sure if I'm gonna stay on. So when I built the budget, I built it based on 2 communities sharing his pay. And so I had a $92,000 budget for him. In building this budget, I know that he is still on in Linfield and hopefully he will continue to stay on, and I budgeted for 3 communities to cover his pay and benefits. So I was able to cut a significant piece out of assessing to help out with some of the other things we have going on. And then in general finance, the only thing that's really changing there is that we're adding just a little bit more money for professional development. We have a new collector who's going to need to get certified and go to all the trainings that the treasurer goes to and all of that. And so I wanted to have a little bit more money for that travel and professional development. But overall, expenses down by 12.19%. Next slide. Any questions?
No?
Jackie, do you want to bring up the shared costs PowerPoint? Thank you. We'll just move right on. So next slide, please. So these are the shared costs, and again, we have another year where it looks very wonky, where it looks like it's only going up 2.8%. But what's going on here again is that we have one more excluded debt payment going away. So in fiscal '25, we paid the last library excluded debt payment, and so that was about $1.28 million, and it's going away. So it's making it look like we have very controlled shared costs, but again, anything but. Benefits are up 9.2 and capital is down 20.5. Capital and debt kind of work together because we do 5% of our budget in debt and capital. And debt looks like it's going down too, but really debt is going up inside the levy about 24%. But outside of the levy, the excluded debt is 100% reduced. So that's what's making it look kind of funny. The vocational schools is going up primarily because the capital charge for the new school that we had was $160,000 last year, is $368,000 this year. So no luck there either. And then obviously FinCom reserves a flat $200,000, so no increase there.
And going forward, our vocational school,
So the way it works is the debt service on the school would be allocated by how many students you have attending at the time. So it will flux based on how many of our students are there. And so also the other thing that was last year was we brought back, I think we had 260 originally budgeted last year, and they hadn't fully kind of executed all their debt, so the debt service payments were lower. And then also if you get more kids going there, you're gonna get a bigger share of the debt. Because they prorated on how many people from each community. So it's a pro rata share of the debt service for that year.
okay, but the cost of building the school, we're sharing in that cost.
Yes, we all are. They borrow for their project and they have debt service payments like we would. And then each year they have to figure out, okay, my debt service is, I don't know, $5 million. How do I allocate that? And they base it on how many students are there from each community. And so,
Not the actual cost of the building.
well,
Both, yeah,
well,
both,
it is
okay.
because hopefully they borrowed for all of it at this
Yeah,
point. I mean,
right.
when I saw that, I'm like, they must have fully borrowed. I mean, I know there was some delays, they had hit some ledge, there was some problems. So I think that last year we were kind of cut a break because I had 260 on there because I expected to be somewhere in that 260 to 300 range. And then I got word from them that we were actually going to see a 160 because they hadn't fully borrowed yet. And so we did catch a break last year, but then this year it went up.
Has our students going there increased over the years, or is Essex Tech
I
taking
feel
some
like
of
there's
those
a couple
kids?
extra students have started going there, maybe in anticipation knowing that it's gonna be a new school. And
Okay,
it's very hard to get into Essex North, is what I
Yeah.
understand, and so people want their options open, and this is gonna be a brand new school as well, and so you're gonna probably see a lot of people opt to go that direction.
depending on the shop, yeah.
And depending on what their offerings are, yeah.
So what does the bill look like? Because my understanding is there's a tuition for the vocational schools.
So the tuition is based on how many students you have, and then when they're doing the debt service, you get your pro rata share over the total number of students and how many of the students are from Reading.
Alright, so it's just broken out into debt service lines when you see it and
So
tuition
if you look
lines?
at the financial forecast, one of the recommendations that this board had asked was that we show the capital charge separately. And so if you look at the financial forecast, when it goes into the book for the warrant, you'll see that I'll show you what the capital charge is and then what the regular tuition is for
Okay,
the
yeah,
students. So that we can kind of separate the two.
Right, no, it's good to know.
Just a question on the capital and debt question, so understand that the excluded stuff comes out. Will we, per the budget, will we spend 5% of the budget on capital
Oh,
and debt
absolutely,
this year?
always spend 5%.
Okay,
That's like how we start. When we're doing the budget, we project our revenues and accommodated costs are projected first, and debt and capital are accommodated costs, so they are looked at first. So we figure out how much is our budget and what is that 5%. Then we figure out how much is our debt service planned for that year, and the remainder is capital, and we use all of it
So
without
the-
question.
the 6.5 million does represent 5% budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, next slide, please. So this slide shows you the detail of what makes up our benefits. That's up 9.2%. Retirement is up 12%. That's a combination of our assessment going up, our pension assessment going up 8.3%. But as you recall, our health insurance last year, after we'd already started to build the budget, came in at a higher number. I reduced OPEB to make sure we had enough for health insurance to $200,000 from $500,000. This year, we're trying to restore it back to the $500,000, making a 150% increase. Not the nicest number, but it is what it is. Medicare at 2%. Health insurance and life insurance 8.5%. We've been seeing very low numbers for at least a decade. We've really done a lot of work to control those costs. But Maya is saying to us to start planning for 7 to 10% to be conservative, because the numbers are just getting a little out of control. We are running very well, and so they expect that we'll be at the low end. But we have to be conservative here, because when we're building this budget, we don't know what our enrollment is, we don't know what our increase is going to be, and we don't want to be looking for that money later, so we have to be conservative. A lot of times what will happen is if we do realize it comes in much lower, we might use that money for something else later at a future town meeting. We move it away or we let it go to free cash. Workers' compensation up 1.3%, indemnification 4%, and unemployment has been surprisingly going up at a pace that's not typical for us. So hopefully, one thing that we have to do is when we get the bills, we have to pay them. And if we want to challenge anything, if we think something could be fraudulent, we can get that back. But we are seeing a trend for unemployment going up, and I'm not quite sure what's driving that, because I don't see a lot of that on the town side, but there is probably a fair amount on the school side. Next slide. This is the capital that we have planned for 2026. I put 2025. I was definitely awake. And so I'm listing all of the things that we have planned for fiscal 26. The typical $50,000 for the permanent building committee, $50,000 for Parker Middle School auditorium lighting upgrade, $105,000 for an arc flash study, a wood and water heater at $15,000.
Is that gas?
I don't know. Would you know? Is it gas, the water heater at Wood End?
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
Is it a gas
No,
water
it's
heater?
electric at
Electric.
Woodend's all electric.
It's all electric, okay. Does that answer your question?
You mean their water's all electric?
Hot water over there is all electric.
Thank you.
And then we have our district-wide technology projects at $150,000. The telephone system for the school, that's another $10,000. Technology on the town side at $100,000, and then we have a pumper engine, a fire truck for $1.15 million. We have ALS defibrillator monitor at $70,000. $275,000 for our highway sander truck. $50,000 for fence improvements. $100,000 for pickleball courts. $100,000 for rock wall repair program, $50,000 for parking lot improvements, $100,000 for sidewalk, curb, and pedestrian safety, $100,000 for skim coating and crack seal patch, and $535,000 for road paving. And I do call that, this has been just a hard budget just to get what we need for road paving. So wherever I have extra, I try, like something like if health insurance were to come in lower, that might be a spot, because in order to keep the grade of the roads, we do need to put more at it. And if the state doesn't give us more, we're gonna need to find ways to fill that gap. And he's definitely made that clear to me. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is that a second fire engine? Like the first one from 3 years ago hasn't been delivered and this is a second
It's
fire
another
engine?
one.
You need to
There's a
replace?
long lead time to get a fire truck. It's amazing how long it takes. So they're picking one up this week, and that one is for fiscal '26, and they'll probably have at least a year time to get that. Amazing, the lead time.
Okay, what is the permanent building committee gonna do with $50,000?
So they have that always in the budget so that if there's a need for something, like I think we did use some money from the permanent building committee for the community center OPM. So whenever they have a need to do something, whether it be hire a consultant to look at something related to the buildings, they have some funds to draw on. A lot of times that does close to free cash if they don't use it, but it's nice to know that we have it when they do have issues that want to be looked at by an expert.
So that's we're calling consulting services capital?
So
Okay.
So the OPM is what they used it for. If they're having a concern about one of the buildings, it will probably lead to an actual capital project. So that's kind of why we would be rolled into capital projects, because all that the permanent building committee is looking at are our facilities and issues related to the facilities. So anything that they identify that they want to look into will more than likely result in a very large capital project. And so that's our justification and why this $50,000 sits within the capital budget, because all of the costs that lead up to a big capital project, like feasibility study and where you're gonna do the design work, all of that, even though it isn't the actual tangible asset, it's all the costs that relate to that project to get there. Does that make sense? No?
Well, I was kind of like, I understand that why they might need a budget for these services, I'm just struggling that this isn't capital, but I
But I don't think
understand we
anything
need
the
to be ready
permanent-
for this.
Nothing that the permanent building would be involved in wouldn't be a capital project. They'd be looking at timing. They'd be like, how long can this last? Like
No,
if they were to
so
see,
it's more like from my perspective,
Yeah.
they need a budget, I understand that, I'm just like, why is it here? That's what I'm struggling with.
because it's part of the cost of identifying a capital project. So I think that's how we kind of always kind of justified it, is that nothing that the permanent building committee would put their eyes on wouldn't be a capital project. It would usually be something large related to one of our buildings, which are capital assets that need
Okay, so-
improvements.
So I've been having some conversations this week, when people wanna donate property to the town of Reading, I understand that town council has asked us to now do a survey before we can accept any of it.
Mhm.
Before we can accept an asset, we're gonna have to do a survey, so that can, that's thousands of
Not
dollars.
familiar with the conversation. Why do we have to do a survey, did she say?
I'm not familiar with the rationale behind it, I'm just taking it at face value. So I've been struggling as well, because that's one of those things where it might not happen, but when it does, then what do? We either we can't accept the donation, or we have to go pull it from somebody else's budget and.
But if somebody's donating like a piece of property to us, a capital asset,
Mhm.
and we wanted to do some, checking on it, I think the permanent building committee could look at, like, do we want to accept this asset? And there's a checklist of things we want to look at, and, they could utilize their money in any way that would kind of.
I'm not sure that's a PBC function to
Yeah.
accept a donation.
I mean, it's
It's not a donation, I'm saying if part of the checklist is to identify whether or not we want to accept a donation of property, like a piece of land or a building or whatever it might be, I could see that they could be involved. When you said property, I'm thinking a building or a
Okay,
piece of
nope,
land.
I'm just talking land, at
Land.
this point, but
But land is a capital asset as well.
it is, and to Mark's point, their charge is not to deal with non-buildings, so that's
No,
these-
land, I thought when you said property, I'm
But
thinking
otherwise,
land.
this is kind of what I'm thinking about, if we're putting items in the capital plan, it could be related to capital projects, and if they don't get used, they get closed out to free cash.
So we did this a couple of years ago. We had a couple pieces of property that the town was gifted at zero.
Yeah, north end of town.
Right, so we had to serve it. And I think we found some funds to do it, but it's pretty unusual that it happens.
I mean, how much money are we talking to do
We'll have
survey
welcomes
work?
for that. It's small.
3 to 20, it depends, and it would, and
I
again,
think it
it's,
sounds like something we'd probably love to use free cash for, I mean, or something, or even if it's an unexpected
well, we have to go to
expense.
town meeting to get that approved.
Well,
Or we go
if
to FinCom.
we could go to
For
FinCom
something
reserves and
that
ask them
small.
for whatever we needed to spend on the survey.
Okay.
When you
And-
said survey, I'm thinking like a list of questions about why, you know.
Oh, sorry, no,
But
no,
you're saying
engineering
surveying,
survey.
surveying the land,
Like
okay.
the services, yeah, the engineer survey.
I wasn't following, why
Yeah.
would she have you fill out a survey?
So like our, the other thing we have is legal costs, and our legal costs, we kind of budget for them, and we have a budget, but these are just like some smaller items that that we don't really have a
Anything that when
mechanism.
we're building the budget is unanticipated that comes up, that's kind of what the FinCom reserves are for. So if something like that were to come up, we could just call the FinCom together and ask them for those funds. And that way there wouldn't hold up the donation, you know, because we
Seems
wouldn't
like a
have
pretty
to wait.
small item, but yeah,
I
okay.
mean,
Yep.
but
Okay.
you know, we have regular meetings with them anyway, so it
Yep.
would just be the added agenda item, and then you wouldn't have to wait for a town meeting to ask for extra funding. That's usually what we use them for, so.
I think there was a couple properties that ARPA funded for conservation. When
That's what it
Chuck
was.
came in here, there was 2 or 3.
Surveying,
We had to
something
survey
like
it.
that, yeah.
Oh, we used to ARPA funds for that? Okay.
yeah, we had a couple.
It was negligible, but
No, it just got me thinking, cause, yeah, but
But it could be something that we could have a regular line item if you really thought that that was something that was needed. But you have to understand that if you don't use it, it's gonna close to free cash and it's gonna
right,
crowd
and
out
we may
something
not use it, right.
I mean, there's also been that conversation where a lot of times this permanent building committee has this 50,000 and they don't end up using it. And it does take away maybe something else they could have done.
Crowding stuff
So it's a
out.
conversation to talk about because you always wanna have money available if something comes up and there's a problem and you wanna have the permanent building committee involved. But it does take away something else you could have had, so there's definitely a conversation that could go both directions on that line item specifically. But it did come in handy when it came to the OPM for the senior community
It was a
center.
good solution and they voted for it overwhelmingly, so I think in the end it was good. I mean, I understand what you're saying about why is it in the capital, but I think in the end it was a good
Also,
solution.
I don't know that I wanna personally, I don't know that I wanna tie up $50,000 with the permanent building committee as an annual permanent line item.
Certainly something we can talk about,
That
it's
is
just been
kind
what
of a
we've
big
been
number
doing.
versus 10
I
or
think when
20.
the permanent building committee came into play was then when we had the library renovation project. We didn't have a lot of pre-work done to help us get those numbers really nailed down. And then we had to go back to town meeting. And then there was a lot of conversation about making sure we had some money to start, you know, looking at things or, you know, and obviously it's not enough money for like a feasibility study, but some numbers that are kind of based on some kind of real estimates done by a professional. And I think that's why they kind of felt that we should have this committee that could potentially get together and, you know, have all these people or experts in the field looking at something and saying,
Yep,
this is
no,
what
I
I think
remember
would
that.
cost. And let's put a little bit of money and see if we can get a little bit of a better estimate, because we did have to go back twice for the library.
Yeah, this is a big number though, I'm gonna say this is beyond little.
No, but
I
when
think
you
it's
talk
proven
about,
to be about
when
right.
you talk about design work is about
School-
10%
we
of
didn't
a
do the
project,
school
it's
this way.
small.
Right, cause it wasn't required, but they've used it, this isn't the first time it's been used. And the other question would be, is it, when it was approved as a committee, did it have a budget
No.
associated?
This was the only thing that's ever been available, just in case something comes up, it's kind of like a safeguard.
Cause
But
otherwise
most projects-
They
tap
could do
in.
the same thing, they could go to FinCom and ask for money, because
Right,
capital
but
projects are
50
not,
is a big pull and they're 200. 50 is not a small pull.
I don't think they should be spending 50
But
annually.
this is more than us.
Yeah.
We should have at least this much, or we should be the same.
Well, that's another topic I wanted to bring
Yeah,
up tonight.
another topic.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So understand that, like, what I think was in mind with this 50,000 is design work, when you're trying to come up with the cost of something not building a building, of course, but like it's usually about 10% of whatever the project is. And so if there was something identified at one of the buildings, it may be able to cover. And so 10% is a lot when you talk about a lot of the projects that are done at these buildings. And this wouldn't even scratch the surface of like most buildings.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point though. It won't even come close.
Well, no, but if you were to identify a major issue with one of the buildings and it's an immediate situation where you want to get somebody on it, identify how much it is so that we can bring it to town meeting at the next town meeting, it could potentially cover something.
Let's think about like just, so Walgreens, we all did that with Walgreens. We didn't engage the permanent building committee and
They weren't involved with the Walgreens, no?
no, we did it, select board did it. I just think that's a big number. I wanna be very cautious of
We had
locking
ARPA
up that much
We
money.
had ARPA money for that, right?
It was,
It
I don't know, what did we
was-
use?
We did.
It was ARPA money.
It was ARPA.
Yes.
The answer is ARPA.
For everything.
ARPA
Use
doesn't,
money.
no more ARPA.
No, I'm still going with ARPA.
I mean,
ARPA for
I'm
nothing.
open to the
Still
idea of making it a lower number if that's what your feeling is, but this is just what we've been
You're a
doing, just to
consultant.
hold a number that's a fairly sizable number.
No, they made a request and we're like reviewing the request. I think you have that backwards.
No, so this is what's been there typically, so
Can
I
I
don't know that's a new
In the
request.
past, what has their budget been spent on?
The permanent building committee?
Joe probably has some good information.
So when we did the building assessments, they went through and looked at all the town and school buildings, and they ranked all the buildings. We had an assessment tool that we used. And they did come across a couple of instances where they wanted an outside consultant to come in and look at. And it was mostly structural work that they looked at.
Like foundation
So
work?
foundation work, some supporting columns in a couple of locations. They felt like it was okay, and it was okay, but they wanted someone to come out and look at it. So they've used it for that, and we used it for one other thing. It doesn't get tapped that often.
The OPM was the only other thing that came up to
Yeah,
mind.
the OPM, but they do
I mean, that's the
use
sort
it.
of thing I'm thinking is like foundational issues where
Yeah.
maybe there's leaking water coming into the building or there's a suspected, like a crack that's visible that could be
Could be
problematic.
anything, it could be anything.
So how long have they had this budget of $50,000?
It's, eight
Since,
years.
since after
As
the
long as
library
they've been-
project, that was when
So
the
how
idea of
often
that.
do they do this review of the town buildings?
Well, they just finished it 3 years ago. I would imagine they're probably gonna do it every 3 to 5 years, redo it.
So are they actually even spending their budget every year?
Not usually, no. It's just, it's there as a safeguard.
And it ties it up, it means we can't.
But it
Yeah,
does
no, I
tie
know.
it
I
up,
was trying to figure out
it
if
ties
they're
it up, but
actually
it
gonna
is
use it.
something that, when you have this many buildings, something could go wrong. There
But I was
could be
thinking, like, the folks, I'm gonna bring up Matera again, like 3 times, magic hat trick, but, so Matera was having those flooding issues and no budget, no trails committee budget to like deal with flooding issues. Like, but if they know they could, that's a municipal building, so
I
go
didn't
to the
know anything
permanent
about
building
that.
committee, make a request, like, then I'd feel a little better about it if people knew, like, there's a pocket of money there if we're having an issue like that.
I guess,
Okay.
to Karen's point, what stops us from taking the 50 grand ourselves and then giving it to the permanent building committee as part of our budget that we
I
always
mean,
do?
as the parts.
Correct.
Because what they're dealing with is capital, and we're trying to keep that 5% set aside for debt and capital. So if I were to pull it out and to put it in your select board budget, it would no longer be debt or capital. It would be just sitting there in case you need to allocate it. We're trying to make sure that we're staying in that minimum 5% debt and capital. And it's kind of an unusual thing. I don't see that a lot of communities do it, and I think it helps us stay on our capital assets and keep things as up to date as humanly possible, that we have that discipline to say 5% of this budget has to be used on debt and capital so that we can take care of our capital assets and our infrastructure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're
It's a commitment, but-
we're all in a little bit of like
But
seems
if
like
I
we're
were
in
to pull
agreement
it out
that's a
to
little
put
bit
it
high.
in the select board, like I couldn't.
No, forget that. I
exactly.
get that part. I get that part accounting wise, but I think we're all in some.
I mean, is there a number that you
Agreement.
think it should change to?
I would ask them. I'd ask the PPC.
I don't mind asking them.
Yeah, I could ask them. I mean, I don't know how this number was derived. It might have been what they suggested when they, because I feel like it's a lot of people on that committee that have specialties in building, which are architects and engineers and things of that nature, I would guess. And they must have some idea of what would be a nice, what these things cost when things come up with buildings, when they have structural issues or things that are being identified that they're not sure, okay, and want to have them looked into. And I think that's really the key is if there's something that they're concerned about, they have some,
But they could go to the FinCom too.
they could go to FinCom too.
Yeah, they have 200 grand. Let's move on. Let's
So-
ask them.
So I
Let's
asked a
ask
quick
them.
question though, so I'm not seeing any vehicles on here. I'm not seeing any vehicles, and I know some of the, at least one department has mentioned, oh, I know I need to transition to like fuel efficient vehicles, and I
Most of
don't
the time,
have
there's a lot of vehicles, it's because we have a fire truck in there.
Okay,
It's
and
kind of
they're like, I
crowding
don't
out
have a
vehicles.
charger, so I need a charger too, and so,
So usually when they want an electric car, they make it clear and that the price that they're asking for would include the price of the charger. It should,
Okay,
when they're
that's what the
asking,
staff
they're giving us
requested.
like an estimate and when they're referring to an electric car, it's usually much more expensive than the normal car.
I'm actually surprised there's no vehicles in here except for the truck.
We normally have a lot of vehicles.
Right.
This is just an odd year. Whenever we
Okay.
have a fire
Okay.
truck, because we try not to borrow for the fire trucks, if we can afford it within the operating budget and not borrow, because we don't like to waste money on interest, we do it. And in those years that you have a fire truck, every, 5 years or something, we have a fire truck, those are the years where you're gonna have less vehicles in there, because this truck eats a lot of that vehicle away, so. We have to still do some baseline paving and everything it does. We could borrow for it, but it's, where interest rates are higher than they were a few years ago, we prefer to keep it in the operating budget if we can. And we're still doing a fair amount of work. We're still using our money, I think, in a way that's benefiting the town.
I see rock wall repair program. Do we have more than one rock wall?
That is a DPW item. I'm imagining that they're working on some rock wall that they've, take in pieces, I guess, like they're doing more work each. It's expensive rock wall.
Not a climbing wall. I thought it was a climbing wall
That's what I
first.
thought. I
Okay,
thought
no, I
at-
think they
at a
actually
school.
mean,
I think it's like
they
masonry.
do mean falling down rock walls, yeah, okay.
Gotcha.
Every year we put money towards it because it's just too big to do.
Yeah, let's write real rock wall. Never mind.
Oh, it's not a rock wall, you mean like the climbing
That's
rock
what I
wall?
thought.
Don't we have something at a school with the things in the walls?
That would be wonderful, but that's not what it
No,
is.
it's not that's a playing.
They're
No, no,
repairing
no,
rock
there's one at
rock
Birch.
walls.
Yeah, there is one at Birch.
Yeah,
But I don't know
there
where
is.
that
So that's what I
But it's
thought
like
it
a play
was.
structure, not.
Okay, moving on.
Okay.
It- it-
Slide, please.
Yeah,
A question here, and I know it's not on this budget, but this is something that's crossed my mind a couple times when we talked about it. When we replace vehicles in town, we're not going all electric, correct?
I think it depends on what kind of car it is.
Well, my concern would be is what if we have like a natural disaster and we don't have electricity, and then we can't run our cars?
I don't think that, we're not even close to having all our vehicles electric.
Well, I would think that, I understand the reason why you would go hybrid, but I would be very concerned.
We
with
have some
moving
hybrid vehicles for
vehicles
like
to all
DPW, but I know that there's been, for police department, but those vehicles are running constantly, so when one person comes off a shift, somebody else is in that car, and so they don't really even have the time to charge them, and so it becomes hard for it to be 100% electric, because there's just no charging time. So police vehicles and vehicles of emergency nature are never probably gonna be anything more, if hybrid maybe could be used, but not fully electric in those scenarios. I think that we're making a conscious effort to do more electric vehicles because,
But I wouldn't wanna even say our facilities or DPW individuals in a all electric. Hybrid, yes.
No, hybrid is what I've
Yes.
seen a lot
Okay,
of in
yeah.
DPW.
It would just concern me
I'm not the
God
one who
forbid.
makes the decision, but they usually come to me and tell me what kind of vehicle and what the cost is when I'm putting it into the capital plan, and if I can fit it in for an electric and they think it's a good spot for an electric, we do it.
Got it, okay, thank you.
right. I know what pickleball courts are. Is this on top of the ARPA money we allocated, or this is?
So the ARPA money was design money to
Oh,
design
yeah,
the
design
pickleball
money,
courts,
right,
and we
design.
have some very generous donors. They're putting a significant sum towards the pickleball courts, and this is, we're gonna put 100,000 of the town's funds towards
Okay, so this is, that was design money. Okay, gotcha.
So this slide here shows you a little bit more clearly how the debt service breaks down. It looks like it's going down by 14.9%, but you can see that the debt within the levy is going up 24.1%, and excluded debt is going completely away. So after fiscal '25, we don't have any excluded debt until we borrow for any other projects. And that obviously requires votes of the residents. So right now, we have nothing. The one-
After 25, you said.
Yeah, fiscal '25, we've probably already made the payment that
Okay.
library's paid for.
Gotcha.
So the one thing that I think some people don't realize is like excluded debt, it really makes the whole budget look a little wonky because on top of the shared cost looking lower than expected, it always makes your revenues look a little bit lower than expected because when that debt service goes away, so does the money that you charge the residents, your revenues go down too. So when you look at the budget of a year where excluded debt goes away, the last couple of years, for instance, it looks a little wonky. It looks like
When did the residents see like the difference?
so they should have seen a small piece of the difference this year, and then next year they will see the library fall off. So the overall impact of all three projects that fell away within the last couple of years was about $300 for an average household of about $800,000. Problem is your tax goes up based on the value of your house, and your house is going up, and so
Yeah,
it
you
kind of gets
know.
buried in the mix. So
That's
I
what
don't
I'm
know that
thinking.
people
No one's
would
building it
notice that their taxes are going down. It probably just makes your taxes go up a little less, unfortunately, because the property values here in Reading have always been, climbing at a good pace. And so it probably isn't enough of a savings for you to actually say, hey, I'm paying less than you than
It's
last
not
year.
called
No.
out. Like, yeah, no one's bills are real. Some people's bills might have gone down a little bit, but it is getting
It's not easy to see because every year you're kind of being billed based on the assessed value of your home and all that, and the levy goes up 2.5% and it's allocated kind of based on your pro rata share of the value of all the property. And so
Yeah.
I would think it'd be hard for somebody to see the savings, but knowing that there's no more excluded debt out there at least is nice when they're looking at a couple projects coming their way. They know that those have gone away.
Or another way to put it is, it would have been $300 higher,
For sure, your bill would have been $300
but it
higher.
wasn't because this came.
And then some of them, it would be a little bit more, like we're saying an average home at 800 something thousand. If your home was worth more than that, you would have probably saw bigger savings. So I just wanted to mention that because it does make things look wonky. In the last couple of years, it has looked pretty wonky. Next slide, please. So this is vocational and FinCom reserves, and as we spoke about, I highlight to you that what's really driving that is that $328,000 of capital charge for the debt service on the new school, the new vocational school, and that's really driving that 18.6%. We do tend to get, high percentages depending on how many kids are enrolled, and when we're building the budget, we don't ever really know who's going to be enrolled, so that can be kind of a wonky line to begin with, but having the capital go from 160 to 328, that's 100% change, and so that really made it look pretty aggressive.
Do the vocational schools let us know how many kids
Yeah,
from
they
Reading
don't tell us-
applied?
They don't tell us
No.
anything until after.
After,
We might learn in October, after the school year starts, or November. And so we're kind of basing it on what we knew from the prior year and sometimes the superintendent might know of kids who have applied and have some information, but it's really hard. And so you'll frequently see me ask at town meeting for a little extra money here and there
Yeah,
to cover
right.
what, because I didn't know, there's an extra student there that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a line that you'll see us frequently kind of ask for additional funds when our projection is off. But this capital charge is the big driver here.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Any questions on the shared cost?
We were gonna ask them as we went, so
Thank you.
that was
I
good.
know, you've been great about that. While we're on the slide. All right, so the next thing we wanted to go over was, Jackie, could you bring up the spending scorecard? I have it in front of me. So when everybody did their budgets and put in what they asked for, we had things in the budget that weren't in the budget last year. For instance, the parking kiosk, the cost to run the parking kiosk was $45,000 within the police budget, $54,000 for the building security software. Those are things that weren't there, that are like true adds to the budget. So when everybody put their budgets in and what they needed, we were over by $106,527. So I went through the budget, department by department, line by line, and I proposed some changes to each department, being as, diplomatic as I could about how much I took from each department and how much and what line items. And I don't like to touch people's budgets without their knowledge, so I sent last night, emails to each department head. This is what our shortfall is. We need to come in line with budget, and this is what I'm proposing to change in your department. Does this cause a hardship? Would you prefer it come from someplace else, or explain to me if you have a hardship? every one of the department heads was very cordial about it and understands that we need to fall in line with the budget that has been allotted to us. And there've been some proposals of, can we change it to this line instead of, don't take overtime, take this instead, or whatever it was. And because they were so compliant with what I sent, we are in balance right now. And what you're seeing here is the actual budget that will go in balance. Can you scroll down a little bit, Jackie? So see that 36,744,291, that's the municipal budget. It goes up 3.6%, which I know our operating budget's 3.5, but what you need to understand is in some of those departments are accommodated costs. So facilities has utilities, that's an accommodated cost. DPW has fuel costs for their vehicles, that's an accommodated cost. And you saw that those percentages when we did our budget, our financial forum, that those costs were going up at higher percentages than we would like. Accommodated cost was not well behaved. And so you are gonna see that the numbers are a little bit higher. And the school department is going up 3.6%, but they also have out of district special ed, which is an accommodated cost. So that makes it look like it's more than 3.5, but the accommodated costs are in there as well. The shared costs that are up at the top, Jackie, can you scroll up to the top a little bit? The shared costs are the kind of the costs like benefits, capital, debt, those aren't mixed into departments, whereas utility costs are in the facilities core budget, the fuel. And so those are kind of accommodated costs that sit by themselves in essence, but some of these departments do have them mixed in. Property and casualty insurance is in the administrative services budget. So there's a lot of them kind of dispersed. Public services has the veterans aid in there, and that's an accommodated cost. So just to make that make more sense for you.
So, yep, no, go ahead, Mark. I don't-
So just following the very bottom, so the 145,596,491 grand total, so 2.9% increase. So you have revenues that equal that, right?
That's where we start, so yes. We start with the revenues. We don't start building anything until we know what the revenues are gonna
Just
be.
making sure.
So, but also too, when you're looking at the 145, you're looking at, that's across not just the town, but the water, sewer, stormwater, PEG,
Yep.
landfill, all of the
Enterprise stuff.
revenues.
Yep,
Yeah, so we start with the revenues and then we're balancing back to it. What we, in that financial forecast that I show at the
Got it.
page.
So this is the balanced budget.
Town's budget.
And unless somebody comes back to me and says, oh, I thought I was okay with what you asked, but I realize this isn't gonna be okay. Unless that happens, we're where we should be, and I won't have to move any of these numbers around.
Is the,
Fingers crossed.
wouldn't the, just because of people cutting cable, wouldn't the PEG be going down? Or you have it the same number?
So I have it the same number. PEG is the one number that could potentially go down. I have to still do the analysis there, but that money doesn't come from our, that comes from the Verizon and
Right.
Comcast. And so that number could change, but when it comes to like the operating budget, the 3.5%, those numbers are all are nailed down pretty much unless something
Right.
comes up that requires a change in between now and FinCom and town meeting. These numbers are the numbers that we're going with.
I doubt it's gonna go up.
No, more than likely, it's been going down.
Right.
It went down from where it was prior because the capital part of the contract from Verizon and Capital, Verizon and Comcast both had a capital component they paid in the early years, and then that's been exhausted, so it makes it go
What
down.
is the landfill enterprise fund?
So that is, it's kind of like I call it almost like a performance deposit. So the landfill used to be over near Walker Brook Drive.
Mhm.
And when we had to do landfill closure, that's like a whole EPA thing. We have to do all this landfill monitoring to make sure that there's no pollution or any problems.
Still?
Oh, yeah,
For a
like
few
30
more
years,
years
I think
too,
it's
yeah.
30 years. And so because we were the
okay.
owner of the landfill, what we have to do is in the beginning, we had a financial responsibility to some extent for
Yeah,
that
no,
monitoring.
okay, it's gonna end eventually.
So what happens now is the developer of that property pays us $37,000 a year, and I hold it until they provide invoices that say they did the monitoring.
Okay,
So right now, we don't have any financial, burden related to the
Okay.
landfill, but because we're kind of on the hook
Yeah, it's the
in some
town's
ways.
responsibility,
The EPA wants
right.
us to make sure that this doesn't go by the wayside, that this is actually done every year. And so as they
Yeah.
give me the bills proving me that they paid, I give them back their money up to the 37,
But is the monitoring in perpetuity for 20, 30 years? Is it
30 years.
30 years?
So every year in January, they send me a check for 37,000. I keep it in an account and then I wait for them to send me proof of what they
In year 31, it's done.
I don't know if, I have a contract for 30 years, so I think it's done.
Yeah.
I don't know if the EPA can enforce something else
Right,
on
right,
us, but that's what I have currently. And I don't know a lot about the EPA, so I don't know if something else could come up, but that's what I know.
Are all the telecom companies paying us now? Do we have leases that are active with everybody that
You
we're
know
getting
that.
paid for?
I know that we have revenue coming in. I don't know anything about the contracts.
Yeah, we do.
All of them?
Well, I think we're still waiting on Verizon. I'll check with Ryan. That was
Okay.
the last one, but the rest of them were
We do
in
have,
order. Yeah.
we are getting
Verizon
cell
was coming,
tower
so-
revenue.
Didn't Verizon want to do extra, like because the north part of town is horrendous?
Well, we
That-
were talking about the water.
Yeah.
Water tower we said. I mean, we want them to do extra, sure.
I would like them to actually. I have
I thought they were
Verizon and
gonna
I
do
never
extra.
have a good signal.
If I remember.
No, that
I
was
think we
over
were
at the
asking.
gun range or something.
Yeah, I didn't know that they were.
It was supposed to
Did
be
they
a, well, are we talking about two different things, like, were they gonna do extra on the water tower to make it better? Or, because they are talking about another tower that would take 3 to 5
No, I
Right,
thought
well, they
the
were never
coverage
on the
was so
original
bad that they
water
wanted
tower.
to.
I thought they were talking about doing the small.
Yeah, they weren't on
Small,
the tower
yeah,
originally.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
We're
they're
talking
talking,
about.
but they weren't on the original water tower, so they'll be on,
Yeah.
they're on
No.
it. And-
Yeah, I'm looking for, are we getting revenue from all these folks now?
Yeah, most of them we are. And
But
it's-
not
it's-
Verizon, so yeah, let's see what Verizon
Right.
is.
They on the
It's-
tower?
And it's small.
I don't think they're on the
Um,
tower if they aren't paying.
So
Are they on the tower? I
It was-
don't know.
They're
when we didn't have all of them, it was 500,000 a year, right? I think it's that
I'll have to
range.
check I think it's
It's
lower
not-
than that, but
We used to
I'll
have
double
three.
check with Greg.
Yeah.
Before the, no, town.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we should just make sure everything
Yeah,
is.
yeah, no, it's a
Right.
good point, it's a good point.
I can definitely, when I do my next quarterly review, tell you what we've collected
Yeah.
thus far, if that's helpful.
It'd be great if you
Releases,
can
yeah.
confirm like who's on the tower.
Yeah, I haven't seen the actual contracts, so
I think the
don't know.
revenues went down. I think I made the comment that I can't believe this went down instead of up. Even though there's more, like, I could be wrong.
What is it that they pay us for?
Just-
To
They're
be-
leasing space
for-
on
yeah.
our water
Yeah,
tank.
they're essentially leases.
So during the time frame that that we were doing the water tank, I think that we had somebody else have a cell tower that they all took their stuff and put it on, and we were just getting minimal revenue for the place that was rented there. And then once they started to put things back on the water tank, they were back on contract with us, and we'll start to see the revenue return.
About the revenue.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just make sure we're getting it.
Oh, yeah, no, we
It hasn't highlighted to me when I'm looking at the finances, so hopefully, yeah, I mean,
It
it,
had stopped or gone way down.
oh, it had gone way down, but like I said, all we were really getting was the rent on wherever that cell tower was placed. It was our land or whatever, and whoever bought the rights to do that was collecting the revenue from the other vendors, and we were just getting rent from that one, whether it be T-Mobile, I forget who it was. And now that the water tank is complete and they're starting to move back over, we should see our revenues return to normal levels. Maybe higher, hopefully higher, because we didn't have Verizon before, but
And on the same line, so the ice arena is another source of revenue for us. So I was just wondering, how come we don't? Where do we have to drill down in here to see like revenue that we were talking about, the revenue from these Verizon, the telephone providers, the carriers, and also like our lease with Burbank? Is PEG I'm gonna assume PEG is called out here because of some regulatory reason.
so we used to do PEG very differently than we do now.
Right.
DOR had changed how it was
Right.
done and said, this is money that you really have to have appropriated at town meeting because it's your money. That Comcast and Verizon is paying you for you to provide public education and access related to, and we have RCTV do it, so we kind of were just
Yeah,
forwarding them the
right.
money, and it was never appearing on any
Right.
appropriation, like you need an enterprise fund, and it needs to go through there, and it needs to be appropriated by town meeting, and that's how we've been doing it.
Yeah.
And we do charge them some indirect costs for my time to to set that up and do everything that needs to be done for them. Not a lot of money, but, and then most of the money goes over to RCTV to fund their operation.
So should we have enterprise funds for all sources of revenue then?
Oh, no, I mean, I think like what you were referring to, were you saying RCTV or were you saying the ice arena? The ice arena?
I was saying the two things, the telephone, the wireless carrier revenue stream we were just talking about, and
So you would never see
ice arena
like
lease.
a line that said, where that would fall is there's a line that says fees that we charge.
okay.
And there's all sorts of things in there. There'd be ambulance charges and there'd be cell tower fees and all sorts of different charges that fall into that category group. When it comes to the ice arena, we have a separate fund that those funds go into a completely separate fund. And we used to use it as a support for the operating budget years ago. But because they had many years where they had more capital work to do and they weren't gonna be able to turn over much to us, we stopped relying on the money. And some money has built up in there. I wanna say it's like 400,000 that's in there now. So we have been starting to see an increase in the return coming in from the ice arena, and it could be a funding source for something, but we haven't been using it for the yearly operating budget.
And we can't budget for it either, cause it's all over the map.
No, but if it's already sitting there, I could say, oh, there's 400,000, I could use 400,000 for next year's operating budget, but then I'm kind of building a cliff of, oh, it's not gonna be there next year, so I have to be careful about what I use it for. A one-time cost would be pretty much ideal, like if we were using it towards a project or something. But,
just don't have a
or a
policy
small,
for
or a
it.
small amount, like we used to use whatever they planned to send us every year, they would send us a pretty standard amount pretty much every year. They'd give us an idea when we were building the budget of what they thought they'd turn back, and we just build it into the budget. Because there were so many years where we got
Okay.
practically nothing or very little, we stopped relying on it.
Right.
So can I ask a question? So I know that one of the things that Ice Arena Board brought up is using their money for rec in town. If we have a $400,000-ish account, why can't we use the $100,000 out of that for pickleball instead of out of our budget?
It requires a town meeting vote to do it, I think.
Well, we could if we went to town meeting with
You could, I mean, and I think that they had hoped to use it back when I thought that there was at one point they were trying to get something on the town meeting warrant to utilize the money, and then they ended up dropping.
Because it's under capital expense, so we don't think it's gonna be a year-over-year $100,000.
No,
Yeah.
it's just a
So
one-time.
I mean, I think that would be a great use of $100,000.
It certainly could be, but it might slow up the, like, if it's built into the budget, they can kind of plan. They've already started the design work on the pickleball courts, they know that they're getting donations, and these people who are donating really wanna see this happen sooner
Yes,
rather than
and I
later, and
understand
be
that,
sure
yeah.
that there's gonna be enough money.
We don't know what it's gonna cost yet. Right, cause right now we have,
We just signed a
100,000
contract for
here.
the design work
Yeah.
that came out of ARPA.
right.
So we'll see if the design comes back.
But we could supplement, cause shockingly, sometimes estimates come over budget.
Maybe that could be a source, like if something comes in higher or there's a project that I mean, there's always
Yeah.
that money
We
just
could.
sitting there that we
Yeah, we
can
could.
exercise our right to use.
Just quick thought and then leave it, but when we do a funding article at town meeting anyway, we always talk about the source of funds, it's required.
I would have to say that would be the source of funds.
But it essentially is in free cash right now?
No,
400?
no,
Or
it's
is it,
its own separate fund.
what kind of account?
It's like a revolving fund. It's like a receipts for appropriation, I think it's called.
I thought they wanted to keep a minimum amount in that, like the roof just cost them 300 grand.
They don't
That's
get
their
to-
fund.
No,
that
this
is
is
our
money they've
account.
already paid,
Yeah.
that
This
the
is money
the
they
town is
paid us.
holding and hasn't
They gave us money
expensed, and it
after
hasn't
they
done
accounted
anything
for
yet.
the work they needed to do.
No, I know that this year was like $100,000, right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
So
part of
that's,
the
they've
fund.
already transferred, but why can't you just add that to the potential source of funds in the town meeting article? To Melissa's point, like, if we go
I
through,
mean,
we say
it's
it's
kind
from
of a
debt,
town meeting
borrowing, free
decision what
cash,
to use it
or
for. I can't really
account.
decide.
Well, that FinCom usually,
They
it's a
could
FinCom
ask me,
decision, or not decision,
FinCom
but
has
a
asked me
discussion.
in the past, can you
Yeah.
tell me what other sources of funding, especially when money is tight and we don't wanna use a lot of free cash. I give them options of things I see sitting out there that they can use as funding source, but usually it's
When
FinCom
Birch
that
Meadow went
decides.
over, we had a
I
big
think we
discussion.
could support the use of this, and, cause they get up and tell town meeting, we support this article, whatever, and they're supporting the source of funding. Usually that's where we have that discussion, what's the best funding source for this unexpected something, you know, and
Yeah, once we get
do
the
we
cost
wanna
of-
use more free cash, we wanna take a smart growth stabilization, or do we wanna take some money out of this,
Yeah.
running ice?
Could I ask a favor? So we do have a series of these accounts that have some funding in them. And it's clear that we don't necessarily know what they are or what's in them. Is it possible to kind of put that together at some point? So you've got Smart Growth Stabilization, you've got Ice Arena money
I
that's
gave
going
it at
across.
the last, was it the last financial forum, didn't FinCom ask me for, I can
think so,
certainly
yeah.
give it
Sure,
to
if
you
you can
guys.
share with
Okay,
us
that'd
too.
be
But it's something they ask for periodically, just so they know
Just
what
so
other
it's-
extra
yeah.
buckets of
Yeah.
money might be able to be there to be drawn upon for projects that we're working on
Spot
or
on.
the
Love to
extra.
see
That's it, exactly.
So they definitely asked me fairly recently, I have no problem providing that to you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, would that include the account that Karen's mentioned? I don't know the exact name, it's like a hospital fund that
Trust.
someone
The trust
donated.
funds
That's
are
very
totally
strict, well.
I
Those
understand,
are
no, I
restricted.
understand that, but I think it would also be good for us to be aware of those funds
The
that are
trust
sitting,
funds,
yeah,
yep.
those
Yeah.
funds that are sitting there,
The
what's in them,
balances,
because I think it would be,
I certainly
We
could
could get
include it in a
creative,
quarterly review,
maybe,
like the
when
report
looking
that the
at
trust
things.
fund commissioners see and
Trust fund
what
commissioners.
funds are sitting there, but know that for every fund that's sitting there, there is a trust fund document that dictates how it can be
Yes,
used.
I
So it's not necessarily available for whatever you think, so you
no,
have, it
no,
has
and I
to
do
qualify.
understand that piece of it, I
And we
understand
have to be
they
very
used for very
diligent about
specific
honoring,
things.
yeah, the wishes of the trust,
Absolutely, but I think it would just be helpful to be aware.
to be aware,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it can't be the hospital pickleball courts
Right.
at Simon's
Pickleball courts for
Way.
the soon,
It can
someday
be
to
the,
be
it
built
can be the
hospital.
reverse side of that, the result of pickleball.
There's gonna be a lot of injuries.
Just put up an arrow there as
We
well.
wanna always
ties
honor the
in.
wishes of whoever donated it and what they wanted it to be
Yeah.
used.
It ties in.
How big could it be if, you know, if we have our active living center, could it be a nurse's station there? Would that
So that
fall
specific
under-
question has been asked,
Oh,
I assure you.
It doesn't.
Mark sits on the trust fund commissioner, so he
Oh,
knows
I
a
just-
lot.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
for.
there's a legal agreement that defines most of the structure.
Okay.
And there are also, on that one specifically, there are income requirements that relate to it also, as it turns
Yeah,
out.
I don't think we're
So
gonna have
we
a
use it
problem
for
finding
things
people with
that
income limitations.
When, you know, a particular activity for people of limited means, that can be used for that.
Okay.
But I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's unlikely we're gonna build a hospital in this town
Exactly.
because I don't think there's a place for it.
And what did we buy
Physically.
masks with it, PPE equipment? We did not check people's ID and we
Are
didn't
they
check
doing
their
like
income limits.
lifeline stuff and
Those
things
lifeline
like
stuff
that?
is there.
And I don't know how we got
for
that out
people
there,
of
but
limited
it was
means.
medical related and we did not check people's income to give them service.
I think anything that's coming out of that has gone through the scrutiny.
Anything that goes through the trust funds, we
It's gone
have,
through the
we're
scrutiny.
kind of on the hook.
I
to
believe
make
it, I'm just saying, it was
Yeah.
done, it was great, it was good for the public, and we didn't check people's tax returns. So I don't,
sure. What
How-
was this,
I don't
they
think
got
it's
what, the lifeline?
Is that our?
I think we did, you got some money out of there. That was yeah, you did, at the beginning of COVID, you got money out of there, how'd you do it? Let's do it again.
No, that was different money
I
that
don't
we used for
recall.
PPE.
It was very much.
But just know
That wasn't
that
hospital
That wasn't
trust
hospital
fund,
trust
trust fund money. no.
any idea to use some of those funds would be checked against that trust fund.
Alright, let's move on.
That's all right.
Okay, I
We'll
think
figure
we're
it out.
done.
So that's a wrap. So if you
Yeah.
have questions, priorities, I have until the end of February to get the budget over to FinCom, so we have a good head start here. We generally don't show the scorecard this early, but I wanted to show a draft scorecard with balance. So thanks to Sharon for putting that together on the fly. Thanks to the department heads, assistant department heads for all of their input. So I think we're gonna have a good budget this year. We're gonna have to keep an eye on the future because things that you can see are getting tighter and tighter. But for this year, I think we're gonna be in really good shape. So, but if there are other priorities, questions, let me know. I'll reach out to all of you as well as I put the final budget together. So, yes.
I would love to understand where the town manager's discretionary line item is and
It's under the town manager's budget. You're talking about the discretionary fund?
make sure that's increasing with inflation.
Okay.
And then at least it's gotta be more than inflation, but
Okay.
to your point, the budget that we have to ask Town Forest Trails and Conservation, and I don't know who else, come before us and justify the use of it.
Yeah.
That has been set at that level for a number of years. I'd like to see that increase.
What was that,
The 35 grand? Is that what it is?
are you talking about the money
25.
to the individual
I don't even know if it's
committees?
25.
20 or 25?
I think it's 35.
Okay.
Are you talking about the committee money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that?
When they come and ask for it.
I'd have to go back and look,
Okay.
but bottom line is like we're so tight, we were over, so I probably couldn't have used those numbers, I'm sure I would.
So that's where I get into like, those are capital projects. A lot of those projects are capital and they're not, and meanwhile, we're holding funds for like.
What do you mean capital for the committees or
Yeah.
capital projects, what do you mean? Like the money that they have set aside, like, you know, like for different committees, there's such a small amount of money, you're saying the capital is what they're
We're
using?
talking about, well, so not on the scale of the town forest, thank goodness, but deferred maintenance. X number of boardwalk feet in our trails cost $15,000, you know. There are maintenance tasks, capital, that needs to be done in those committees, and they do not have budgets, so they come to us and they, like everybody else, have seen their costs go up.
I know it's hard, but like
I don't know
we're
if it's
struggling.
capital though, that's repairs to a
It's more like, I think it's
Building new boardwalk is capital. That's what they're doing, building new boardwalk is capital.
I don't know if it is or isn't.
where I had to cut money from operating budgets, I did not increase those committees, I just couldn't afford to, like,
But you level funded them,
level
Yes.
them.
level.
I didn't cut them. The one thing that you did mention that I did cut was the town manager,
Just by a couple grand. I mean,
it
we all had
was
to sort of
20
pitch in
and
a
I brought
little
it down
right
to
now, but-
18, but like
but it-
everybody had to share a little of the pain to
Yeah,
get down to
and it
the.
tried-
Oh, you were at 20?
Yeah,
It was
it's
at
20.
20
It's
and
I
I
thought it
was
was at 10,
18.
okay.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's
it's at 20,
18
so
now.
Alright, so
now
he's
it's
got
at
18 over there,
I have
guys.
18,
Full
yes.
disclosure, I cut it,
Thank you,
and I
yeah.
couldn't afford.
Yeah, and that's fine, you know, we all, like I said, we all have to pitch in a little bit to get to the balanced budget, so.
We don't have a
We
line
we
item
got our
per
shovels
se,
today,
so,
Sharon, huh?
you know.
I was
They
the bad guy, but
requested
people were so nice
38.
to me, cause I
Well,
took
we
a
gave
lot of money from
20.
people's budget.
Our budget was 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, our
okay.
budget is only 20 and it's been that way, so
Your select board budget?
the budget to fund those committees, it's
Yes.
been that way since at least
I mean,
last
I
year.
get it,
A
but
few-
like
a
the
few
operating
years,
budget had
yeah.
to be my.
Okay, we can, like I said, we can still take a look at things and, you know, as things shake out a little bit,
Let's
so.
get a motion.
It's small stuff.
Okay, thank you all.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned, 9:30.